What is going on, everybody? This is Drew here. I want to welcome you all to a brand new episode of Phoenix Down. This is Phoenix Down 113. That's right, 113.0. We're starting a new series. I know we were supposed to go back to our resident Yakuza, but we decided to take a detour for one game, and we are playing AI, the Somnium Files. Today I have with me Matt.
Hello, friends.
And long time ago, returning guest Jay.
Hey, fellas. I think the last time I was here was for Danganronpa V3, I think.
Holy crap, that's like 2 years ago.
Yep, about 2 years ago. And you know me, I only bring the hits, so you guys are strapped in for a wild ride.
That's true. Yeah, we're raring to go on this one. So, AI, the Somnium Files, developed and published by Spike Chunsoft. I guess the same director of the Nonary games.
That's right, the same director of the Zero Escape game. So that's the 999, Virtue's Last Reward, and Zero Time Dilemma.
That's right. I keep saying the Nonary games. Is that different?
So Nonary game is specific to 999. That's when they play the Nonary games. The Zero Escape series is kind of the name for the trilogy of the games.
Okay, because I remember they had a bundle called the Nonary games, and it had 999 and Virtue's Last Reward in it.
Yeah, they did, which is kind of strange because you do need all three games to understand the full story. So it feels like it should be included, but they kind of made that game because 999 was remade for that particular release with full voice acting and other like the adjustments to modern platforms and stuff like that because it was originally a DS game, so that was a while ago.
Yeah, I played both those. Those are fantastic games.
Yep. Matt, do you have experience with those games at all?
I've started 999, but that's it. I've gotten maybe an hour or two into it.
Gotcha.
The true ending to 999 is a complete mind fuck.
Yep.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, so I, as we always do at the beginning of a series, we talk about our history with the game. For me personally, I remember Sophie reviewed this game, and I proofed that review and never looked at it. And she wasn't too hot on it.
She wasn't hot. Do you remember what she gave it?
Like a 6.5, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like either 6 or 6.5 for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess. This is definitely it feels a lot different than the other games like 999 and stuff. Like 999 and the other games are a lot like a puzzle game mixed in with a mystery. While this one feels more like it really just feels like a visual novel. I feel like I'm just kind of watching things play out. There are a few occasions where you kind of have to do like a Phoenix Wright present evidence kind of thing. But for the most part, I feel like I'm a passive watcher in this whole thing. Yeah,
so compared to like the Zero Escape games where you have this very elaborate escape rooms you need to kind of traverse and get through, this game doesn't have as many segments as that, but it does have several different gameplay mechanics. I think the most, important one is the one where you go into the Somnium, which is where you dive into the subconscious mind of another individual to try to, get like clues and understandings of people. And think of it kind of like a sci-fi twist on the detective genre. You're trying to figure out a particular possible serial killer who's at large, and you're trying to figure things out. And with the ability to kind of dive into the minds of people who might be suspects or who might be connected to the events, it gives you a lot of different hints. But the interesting twist being is that when you enter a person's subconscious, you don't just get the facts. It's not that simple. It's kind of in a dream where you're going to see a lot of really weird and crazy things that happen that don't make a lot of sense. You're going to need to be able to interpret that information to be something that's useful. So it's not something that they can present in court and say like, well, in their somnium, in their dream, they killed this person, so this person is guilty. That's not how that works. It's obviously not something that they can point to and say definitively, but it's something that points you to the right direction. It gives you the right clues to take for your detective work, and I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really important piece of this too, because if it was just the facts, it would be even more linear. I really like the fact that it is dreams, and because it's dreams, you actually have to do more detective work to try and understand the truth behind it, or the truth underneath it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing being is that when you are in a dream, it's not like there is no rules. There is also still a rule and regulation with that. You can't dream about something that you've never seen or you've never experienced to some degree. So it's not something you can just be pulling things out of your ass and then, all of a sudden, oh, this person must be the suspect because they dreamt this. And then it kind of depends on it not being the case and all this, because it still has rules within its illogic base, so you have to kind of consider that as well. So it gets kind of intense in a lot of the Somniums, and I know you guys went through a lot of different Somniums, and there's some weird, crazy stuff that happens in there.
Yeah, definitely. The one big thing that I always knew was like, oh, this has branching paths, like much like the 999 stuff like that, where there's multiple endings. And one thing that 999 had, or that this game has that 999 didn't, was that, oh, you can just have this wonderful flow chart and say, I screwed up here. I want to see what happens if I do this other thing. And you don't have to go through the entire game again.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it doesn't feel so much like different endings to me as much as you've only unlocked this piece. Like, it doesn't feel like we've gotten the whole ending, because it very clearly leaves major questions open. Even if you do everything right on a given path, you're definitely not seeing the whole story.
Yeah, I noticed that too, because I was like, okay, I got an ending, and I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I got another ending, and I was like, oh, that's completely different from what I believed. So I don't know what to believe.
I almost take it more like Game of Thrones style, where each character is going to have their own view on an ending, but none of them are necessarily the true ending. It's just from different perspectives. You get more story bits unlocked, which is kind of a cool way to do it. It makes it less linear, I guess, but also you kind of still need everything to get the whole story. I would never consider this game done after just reaching the one ending.
Oh no. If that's one of the things that I would consider. Like, for example, this would be a no fault by like Sophie's thing. If she just reached one particular ending and said like, well, I've seen enough of this game, and then she quit there, I could kind of understand like her viewpoint of the game not being so hot. But when you have to kind of delve back and go back in, and if you don't understand how the flowchart works, I can understand it being kind of a daunting task to try to go back in to get the full ending. But visual novel players know that unless you get the true ending of a particular game, you haven't finished that game at all, and that's also true for this game too.
Yeah. So, as far as my history goes, I remember hearing about it via Sophie's review that I proofed. For a long time there, whenever you were bringing it up, Jay, you brought it up multiple times. I was getting it mixed up with 13 Sentinels. I don't know why. I guess the art style's kind of the same.
Well, I think they're both games that I have praised for their story, and their presentation probably is most likely the thing. 13 Sentinel is another game that I would love to bring, but the logistics behind covering that game, if you've ever played it, and if you haven't played it, then you don't understand. But if you thought my path and recommendations on how you need to play this game in order to make the conversations work was complicated for this game, that game would be like Alpha Protocol to like Mass Effect 3 difference.
God,
it's massive. The branching path, the different character storylines you can do, and other things. It's ridiculous. I'm never bringing that game, but I still recommend that you play it at some point.
Yeah. God, I'm starting to realize that's what you bring to Phoenix Down is branching path the game. Everything. Like Alpha Protocol, the first game you ever did with us.
That's true.
It's like, Jesus Christ, I still have yet to meet a game that had that.
Yeah.
That was unique.
cannot suggest that game enough. It's rough. It really is rough to play. But man, this the amount of the ways things can deviate in that game is wild.
That game is, I think, the quintessential hidden gem, if you think about it, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because reviewed terribly, but if you actually look past its failings, you're going to uncover something that is truly unique and vastly impressive, even for modern standards.
Did you, I have to, this is a little bit of a tangent. Did you play The Outer Worlds, Jay?
I did.
What did you think of it? Obviously, it's not an Alpha Protocol, but I mean, does it have the feelings of an Alpha Protocol?
Nah, it gives me more of a Fallout feeling more than Alpha Protocol.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still fun, though. I liked it. Yeah.
I only got like 2 hours into that game and never went back to it. But I need to. There's tons of games I need to go back and play, but I never did it. But Matt, how about you? Your history with AI?
Yeah, I don't really have any. Other than, hearing the name pop up a little bit, I definitely missed it on release and didn't pay any attention to it really until they launched it on on the Xbox service. And I liked the way it looked. I liked the intriguing murder mystery setup, so I gave it a try. I played maybe an hour. Thought it seemed pretty good, but just didn't really have time to dive any further into it. So I was excited when it was recommended for this because it was a good excuse to get in and see a lot more of the game. And to be honest, I had seen almost nothing of it on that first playthrough, so much different.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think I'd ever seen a screenshot of this game until I played it. So, and Jay, I know you probably picked it up day one.
Well, I actually ended up getting a spare review copy that Ken sent me. But my big failing in that was that I was actually playing other things at the time, and I actually let this game pass me by for like 6-7 months before I even really stepped into it, and that was a bummer because honestly, if I had played this game during the year that it came out, it would have been on my top 10 list for sure. But because I waited till next year to actually finally dive into it and play it, I wasn't able to do that. So kind of bringing the spotlight to this game is kind of my atonement in a lot of ways of, kind of bringing it to people's attention. And also, it just happens to be that the game is on Game Pass, more accessible than ever to everyone. And also the sequel's coming out in a matter of like a month or two. So if you're going to be playing this game, this is literally the best time to play it right before the sequel drops, which is going to be a direct continuation of this game, so.
Yeah, that's really cool. And also the fact that it was on Game Pass really helped me having traveled this last week because the way I played this game changed almost every time I sat down to play it. On my phone or on my tablet or on the Xbox with or without a controller. It's a simple enough game that you can play it without a controller.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man. Like, I love to see the idea that games can become so accessible, they can play on so many different platforms, given your particular lifestyle and whatever time that you have available. And because they basically syncs with each other, regardless of the platform that you're on, you can kind of pick up and play anywhere. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really amazing. It really demonstrated the power of Game Pass for me. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. And it was and this is the perfect Game Pass game for that because on your phone, I can't stand playing with touch controls and stuff like that. But since this is not an action heavy game, you can totally do that.
Yep,
absolutely.
Yeah, I did it too. I played on my phone a couple of times.
Yeah, it was really easy to sneak in 15 or 20 minutes and downtime.
Yeah,
nice.
And the scenes are not too long. It's not like you're sitting there for 40 minutes. Doing an investigation, they kind of keep you in a nice little quick path. Every 10 minutes, you're doing this, doing this, doing this. So it's nice bursts where you can just play.
The pacing's done pretty well in the game for sure, and because it auto saves and allows you to manual save if you need to, and also the best part, the flowchart is always available. If you screw something up, or if you want to go back because you maybe didn't understand something, you want to go back for a certain hint, you can not only go back to a certain time or a certain event, you can actually choose which of the event you had already completed before you go to the next one, saving you even more time on top of skipping. So in a lot of ways, I think AI Somnium Files is the most forward-thinking visual novel game in the way that it's not strictly a visual novel, but it's what I imagine the modern visual novel ought to be in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about it. It is a visual novel kind of game, where the character you're playing as is Date, who is a detective in I guess it's a borough of Tokyo, I'm assuming.
You can kind of consider it like a special ops division of the police department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he is a special type of detective because he works in this special ops, like you said, where they specialize in experimental deep diving of people's psyches using basically what they call Somnium, which is like a dream state, almost a lot like Inception, almost.
Yeah, I could see that comparison for sure.
Yeah.
Where you're sharing dreams with the other person. And on top of that, and I think probably the biggest leg up that he has is that he's missing an eye, and he has an AI eyeball in his eye that he is missing that serves not only as kind of like a partner to him, but a complete database of everything. It serves as a cell phone. It serves as the internet, so he can look up whatever he wants to with it, and it has its own personality. Iba is the AI's name, and she also is synced to Date's memories and basically his brain waves, so she can actually just telepathically talk to him. So he can be having conversations with her just in his mind. And she has a lot of tricks. So he can have X-ray vision. He can zoom in really far. There's also a heat vision. He's got pretty much everything he needs right there.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's a lot of mystery with the main character. 7 years ago,
6.
he doesn't. Right? 6 years ago,
everything in this game seems to have happened 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years ago. He doesn't remember anything past 6 years ago. And obviously that's kind of a big mystery, and it's actually brought up early in the game. But yeah, he somehow lost his eye at that time as well. Doesn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a series of murders 6 years ago. Kind of critically, interestingly timed with some of this.
Right. A lot of the stuff feels like coincidence to the point where it feels too obvious to be true, but at the same time, could it be a double fake out or one of those things where they make a red herring so obvious to the point where you discount it, but it ends up being true or vice versa, so you have no idea where they're going to go with it.
Yeah. And the boss, his basically his chief, really doesn't want him to pry into what happened 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. She will not. She's like, just shut up, stop asking about it. It's not a big deal. Granted, if I was him, I'd be like, no, it is a big deal. What the fuck am I?
And the fact that you're not telling me is making it a bigger deal.
Yeah. But so the game actually begins with Date arriving at a crime scene in a park. This park shut down 6 years ago because of it was a chemical spill.
It's like a chemical leak, contaminated the area.
And this area of town is basically just cut off. Like, nobody lives there. People aren't really allowed to be over there. But they had found an anonymous tip came in saying that there was a body discovered there. And when we arrive, the boss is there, and she tells us, "Let's do an investigation. I know you're here. We wanted you here because you knew the victim." And the victim's name is Shoko Nadami. And to begin with, we don't exactly know what his relationship with Shoko was, but he definitely knew her. And it's a pretty gruesome sight. So there's like a merry-go-round with like the horses, and she has been tied up to one of the horses, and she's missing an eye. The left eye has been pulled out of her skull, and I believe she has some. She was strangled?
No, she
or
was
stabbed. She was stabbed.
Times.
That's right. She was stabbed.
And the interesting thing about the eye is that based on forensics of the blood loss on the location, the eye was removed while she was still alive. If the eye was removed after she was dead, there wouldn't be any excessive blood loss like there would be on this particular case.
It comes up later, but I won't bring it up until it comes up later.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd start the investigation. So this is kind of like the tutorial where we're learning how to investigate things, much like a point-and-click adventure kind of game, where you can click on everything. And there's a lot of times where there's dialogue between Date and Aiba, and it's just random stuff. Like you could click on a park bench, and he'll mention something about it. Most of which has nothing to do with the actual investigation. But we had to observe the body, how it was positioned. Obviously, the missing eye, potential cause of death, that sort of thing. I'm trying to imagine if there was any other clues here.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the eye was missing. I think they say right there, it's just gone, so it's...
And nobody knows where it's at.
Starting to think, is there like a trophy killer out there? And
right.
And then a lot of the extra horses were impaled on spikes, like around the merry-go-round, which isn't...
I think they noted that was just vandalism after the fact. It wasn't, so there's no necessity in terms of connection to what the killer might have done as far as that. But the whole trophy killing thing brings up an excellent point, because if you know a lot of prolific serial killers, not just in our time, but in general, just have this kind of need for like a trophy to kind of show that they did something of note, right? So it seems to be something of a behavior of a serial killer. So definitely a good note.
And while we were investigating, there is a sound coming from the center part of the merry-go-round, and we use our X-ray vision to look and see that there's somebody there. So we open the door and find another familiar face, which is Mizuki, excuse me. I don't have that up here. There we go. Mizuki and Mikumi. What the fuck am I talking about? Yeah. Mizuki, which is, comes to find out that's actually the victim's daughter. And she is sitting there in kind of like a fetal position, kind of in shock, holding what looks like it could be the murder weapon.
Yeah, like a bloody ice pick.
A bloody ice pick in her hands. And, it kind of just, cuts off right there. Uh-oh. We got a cliffhanger, and it goes on to the next portion. So it not only is this game divided into days, which I think, from what I can tell, happens in the span of like a week, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
About that,
5-6 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then in between there are like scenes. Okay, so this time on this day, this time on this day, this location, that kind of thing. So after returning back to the police station, we try to basically assess what we had just learned.
Actually,
with the boss.
Before that, there is a sequence where they have you kind of go through a Somnium, our very first introduction to Somnium.
That's right.
Right, in the dream world, it looks like an apartment, and you're doing activities with Aiba, who's kind of has this humanoid avatar that she created. She says it's to Date's taste, but he doesn't seem to agree, commenting that she looks like some kind of a humanoid shrimp of some kind.
Yeah, a fluorescent shrimp.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
That's right, and this is the other part of the game where you actually move a character around and have to investigate certain things in this dreamlike location. And this one was freaking weird because there was like a skeleton sitting on a couch.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, some of these Somniums, while they're really cool, feels a little bit too much like trial and error.
Yeah, 100%. Which
there are times where I'm like, this is the only option that makes sense. But then there are times I'm just like, I don't know. Should I drink it? Should I smell it? Should I kick it? I don't know.
Right. I completely understand where you're coming from because, like I mentioned before, because this is like a dreamlike world, our basic, logic isn't going to really work here, right? So there is a logic to the madness to the point where it has its own rules and what you're trying to accomplish within that particular space at that time. But if you try to think about it in a way where like this is the only thing that makes sense, then you're already kind of playing a losing hand right there, right?
Yeah, sometimes it was logic based, sometimes it was what kind of hint did the game give me? Did the light fall on something a little bit differently? But I feel like I wouldn't have had any real problem with it, except the fact that there's such a strict time limit.
Oh yeah.
Which which means you can't really fail, or you're going to fail the whole thing. So I don't know. I ended up having to use a guide for a lot of them, to be honest, just so I could get through them in, without. I don't know how many times it would have taken to retry some of the more complicated ones.
The last one, I did everything perfectly and still didn't have enough time. I had to strategically screw some things up so I could get a timey that would it's only 10 seconds now. Like one of those, because the last Somnium that we did for this recording, I did everything perfectly.
Yeah.
I even messaged Jay. I was like, I don't have enough time, even if I did this perfectly. So there is some strategy involved there on like using when to use the bonuses. And when to hang on to them.
So to briefly describe the bonuses to people that don't know what we're talking about is that when you do certain actions, sometimes they come with these things called timies, and what it is a modifier to the next action that you want to use with it. So if you get a timie that says 1.5, and you use that timie on an event that takes 30 seconds, and you activate the timie and then do the event, it's going to take 15 seconds instead of the 30 seconds. So in some situations, you have to actually do events that have nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish, just to try to get those timies to be able to, so they can use. If you do certain things that are either really terrible for the person that you're kind of diving into, to their like subconscious, or things that are completely off the mark, you might actually be penalized for like a multiplier, and that becomes used automatically on the next event that you do. So you have to be very strategic in getting those timings and knowing how to use them. And like Drew and Matt said, it can be challenging. I think there are like 3 particularly challenging Somniums, and the ones that the last one that you guys did happens to be one of the 3. That's like one of the hardest ones in the game, so I can understand why you guys have a problem with it. And the solution is not the most obvious one either, so I understand there. But to me, I think that introduced another gameplay element, was like a puzzle factor to it, and I enjoyed that aspect. But I can understand Matt's frustrations when if you keep failing and you have to retry over and over again, it can get frustrating. You do get some retries, like tokens available where you can go back to certain locks at certain points of time. But it can be kind of costly in terms of what you can do, which is a shame because a lot of the Somnium actions you can do is actually really funny and creative in a lot of ways. So not being able to see all of them is a bit of a missed opportunity in some cases.
Yeah. So the first one was like the tutorial for it, so I don't think they really had a time limit on the first one. I could be wrong though.
I think you're right. It wasn't a typical Somnium. It was just Aiba delving into Date's dream, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a typical Somnium where you're going into the mind of another individual where the actual danger comes. So this was kind of a laid back, showing you the logic within its own dream and giving you kind of a little hint because you keep seeing this figure, this this individual kind of flashed in and out of existence, and Date claims that he has no idea who this person is, but like we established with dreams, you can't dream about something that you've never seen, someone that you've never, spoke to, whether it's in person or on TV or whichever. So you kind of begin to feel like, okay, maybe this is someone that maybe Date knew before he lost his memory, and is kind of hidden away in his subconscious. It's kind of the hint that you might be able to get from here. Whether that's true or not comes later.
Right.
Yeah, and the extra confusion that comes from maybe it's just somebody that's on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot there to keep in mind. But yeah, so I to be honest with you, I can't really remember much of this tutorial Somnium.
No, the Somnium itself is not that important. The only thing I think that's important is this individual that keeps popping out is this man. We don't know who it is. They don't tell you who it is, but it seems like he might be a part of Date's history. And then basically the Somnium ends at that point, and then we go to day 2 where you were talking about being at the HQ.
Yeah.
If there was a slightly easier way to do the Somniums, I thought it was a little strange that you just go through these mental locks. You're like checkpoints throughout the Somnium, and there might be 3 or 4 or 6 of them. If they told you the clue beforehand, I think it would have been a little more interesting to try to decipher the appropriate route through the Somnium.
They do actually give you a 1-sentence hint as to what you're trying to accomplish as an overall goal to get past the one lock. It's like on the upper left corner of the screen. I think you might be able to expand it to view it. But yeah, it can be very cryptic, like you said. But in all honesty, I would say give it one try without a guide just to see how far you get, right? And if you feel like you need the guide, then feel free to use it. It doesn't really give you any spoilers. But the only thing that you might be kind of robbing yourself out of is because there might be multiple different solutions to a problem, and you might be able to figure something out that the guide doesn't even tell you that you might end up enjoying more. So
interesting.
There's always that option,
Yeah. So back at HQ, we're talking with the boss and basically assessing all the information that we have and possibly, who may have done this. Looking kind of bad for Mizuki. She's sitting there with a murder weapon. She's in the vicinity. Mm-hmm. She's not talking to anybody. She's actually in a mental shock, I guess, because she saw her mom dead. So it's looking kind of rough for her. But then, what other suspects are there? Well, the first obvious suspect would be the lover in her life, which is Renju?
Well, in this particular case, it happens to be the ex-husband.
Ex-lover,
yeah. Always got to start with the jilted lover or the ex-boyfriend.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Renju, nobody knows where he is. They need to probably find him, but that's obviously another potential suspect in this, and who the hell called in the anonymous tip?
Yes.
We got look into that as well. Luckily, we know who was where it was taken from because it was from a payphone. So we could probably gather from there. I want to say Iba got that information. I think she also checked she checked the security cameras around there.
Mm-hmm. And then she was able to locate the individual who made the call.
Yeah. Which is a person named Ota. So we got a few leads that we can go by. And I think we hit the streets before we do the next Somnium, right?
That's right. So you have a couple of options in order to figure out where you would like to go. But before that, in the boss's office, did you guys notice how much props and how much stuff that she has on her walls, nonsensical stuff too, like Christmas trees and happy birthday celebration stuff? Did you guys try to click on any of that stuff and get additional flavor conversations?
I clicked on everything in there.
Yeah, I think I did too. You get the reason from her eventually as to why she's got so much stuff, which is, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of being in an office without any windows, right? That does seem like a pretty terrible fate. We kind of take it for granted that we have windows and other things to kind of keep us connected to the outside world. But when you're underground, you know, in a secret facility, you don't really have that luxury. So the idea that she wants to just have a bunch of stuff lying around to make sure that she's not like suffocating in there, I thought was a pretty nice touch. And the game is full of it. Go ahead.
Did they say how many floors underground they were?
I don't remember the specific number, but I think they're at least like 4 or 5 floors down.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw a number, but I got the sense that it wasn't just the basement.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, they're deep in there. I mean, the freaking Somnium room is 2 stories. It seems like.
Yeah, it's almost like an auditorium in there. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have a few cold leads, but they're leads at least. And we had to hit the streets. First one, I mean, you can choose which one you want to. So it's kind of like you're eventually going to go to all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can choose which one you want to hit first.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was any kind of intentionality to the order, so I basically just did them all top to bottom.
That's what I did too.
Yep. No, I think that's perfectly fine. So where did you end up first?
Limnus Gate.
Limnus Gate, okay.
Yeah. And Matt, I guess you did too?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So Limnus Gate is the production company, the PR, or like a talent company.
Exactly.
That is owned by Renju, which is Mizuki's father and the estranged husband.
Right,
of the
and
victim.
also Date's friend. They're old timey friends from years ago.
Yeah.
Which is already a very tight linking between all the characters here.
That's very true. There's also a link with Mizuki, with Date, but we haven't actually gotten to that point yet.
Yeah. So, we're going to go check, see if we can get a statement from him where he was. And while there, we actually run into the guy who made the phone call.
Yep.
Ota, who is a 24-year-old guy.
Is he 24?
Looks like he's 24 and he looks like he's 17.
Yeah, he looks like a couple of maybe like a second year middle school student.
Yeah. He dresses like Ash Ketchum.
That's a good comparison, nice.
But he is apparently obsessed with a girl who is in this talent agency. She's a internet celebrity, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, so you can consider it kind of like a YouTuber equivalent, right?
Yeah. Or a vlogger or something like that. Named, God, there's so many names for this person. Aset is her screen name. He calls her Tessa, but her real name's actually Iris.
Right. Not only Ota, though, there's someone else at the Limnus Gate. Did you guys get to meet this other individual as well?
I can't remember.
There are huge breasts behind that counter.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, the receptionist.
Yes. Okay.
I you know something, and this is just me.
Yeah.
I already know it's been established that Date is a horn dog.
You don't say.
I deliberately did not click on any of the offensive stuff.
Oh, come on, you're missing out on good dialogue.
I'm sure I am, but I'm just like, I get it. He's horny. I get it.
Mm-hmm. I found some of that stuff to be funny, but some of it to be, clearly that kind of over the top.
Yeah.
Cringy.
Yeah, very cringy.
It's play for laughs very, very clearly, without any distinction there. So it's meant to be that, like kind of one of those like dumb character traits that some characters have. So it's one of those things for Date. And I can understand if people feel like it's cringy because I think it kind of is supposed to be. But I found it to be funny, and how it actually ties into some of the gameplay moments is actually really
Jesus,
funny.
That
We'll get there. We'll get there, Drew. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Matt. You wanted to say something?
No, just that like when it was him doing it, and then like Iba scolding him. A lot of that I found funny, but there were certain like weird parts even from Aset herself that didn't really seem to make as much sense that she would be making those kind of jokes. So I felt like there was a little bit of bleed over where that was just a part of the game regardless of who was going to say it, and I just thought that was a little bit weird.
Yeah. But, yeah, so we sit down and talk with Oda, and we're like, hey, we know you did the call. You called it in. You were there at the scene. And he for a long time there, he didn't want to even talk to us. He's sitting there on his computer. And Iva is able to basically hack into his computer and say, oh, he has a fan club devoted to ASET, and he is pretending to be trolls and haters of ASET while defending her at the same time.
That's such a terrible thing to do, by the way. Like, what an awful thing you can do to a person.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And he's really wanting the senpai to notice him, apparently. But it's like, okay, well, I'm going to use that against you. So it's like, I know you're doing this, so why don't you answer my freaking questions? So he finally admits, yes, I made it. I made the phone call. Why didn't you just use your cell phone? I dropped it in a puddle. Doesn't work anymore. Okay. What were you doing there? And he's like, well, me and Mizuki went there. Okay, why? Well, I don't know. Mizuki wanted to go there. He kind of left it at that. During that time, ASET comes down, and we start talking to her. And she is really wanting to follow Date around to be like an investigator.
She seems to have a big interest on detectives and things of that nature. Maybe romanticizes it a bit.
Yeah, I got it, part of it being that, and part of it being maybe she thought that she would get good material for her channel.
Yeah, that too, sir.
Yeah. So she kind of blackmails Date and is like, okay, I've got video of me running to you and hugging you, and I'm going to post it to all my followers unless you let me come with you.
Yeah, 2 instances of blackmail in the last 4 minutes of game.
Yeah, for real. And Dante's like, all right, fine, you can come with me, but you're deleting that afterwards.
Well, the thing about it, Matt, I'm glad you pointed that out, because think about it from a karma standpoint, right? Date blackmails Zota. Iris blackmails Date immediately after, one after the other. It's just good old karma.
Everybody's got dirt on somebody.
Yep.
The one thing I can't remember is Renju himself. We went there to meet with Renju.
He wasn't there.
Yeah. He wasn't there. Eventually, Renju does talk to the police. Because I remember they said that he gave a statement.
Yeah, he gave a statement, but they didn't have any evidence to hold him there, so they just basically let him go.
Yeah, basically he said he was at Lemnis Gate all night, and they didn't know anything about it. So, what do we do? We decide we go back to the park, right?
That's right.
And want to do another kind of quick investigation after everything's over with. And I can't, dude, we're starting to get into the parts that I'm fuzzy about because I did this 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. That's no problem. I can shine the light. Whenever you're unsure, just feel free to tag me and I can help you out.
Yeah.
So we go to the Bloom Park, and Iris at this point has a lot of different theories about things of Eye of Providence, Eye of Wedget, Horus, Egyptian gods. And it's one of those situations where she's bringing up a lot of different topics and theories for whatever the connection might be. So she absorbed the idea that there is an eye missing, and she's trying to maybe link it to any possible conspiracy theories or any, really interesting ideas for what that could possibly mean if it was a serial killer, if maybe it might be some kind of a ritual killing, right?
Right.
So a sacrifice for the Horus, the Egyptian god, whose symbol is the left eye of Providence and stuff like that. And during that time, you guys notice that there's actually no blood on the horse, where
right.
the body was found, which kind of leads us to believe that the body was moved after she was killed, because otherwise all those stab wounds in the abdomen area would have had a lot of bleed on the thing. And Iris kind of at this point feels faint, and you decide to just take her home.
Yes.
And then we go over to Iris's home. There's a woman there, and the interesting thing is that this is actually the same woman that we saw in Date's dream.
That's right.
So clearly, Date must have seen this person one way or another at some point, but he has no idea who she is. But her name is, he told me, she's a school teacher, and she's known Renju through high school, and she's, of course, Iris's mother.
Yes.
She had Iris when she was very young, when she was like 19 or something like that. And when you actually enter that room, you actually notice that this is the apartment that Date's previous dream actually took place in. The same furniture, the same picture on the wall, the same iris flower as well. So it feels like Date's connection to this person he told me and this place. There must be something deep there, but Date is not able to put any any ideas to it. And he also notices that he told me he can't use her right arm anymore after some kind of an incident.
It also raises some interesting questions about the Somnium itself, and can it be predicting the future? Is it just a dream? Is it is it more than that?
Exactly, because we don't quite understand in a lot of ways. If you're thinking scientifically, there is no definitive answer we have in modern science for why we have to dream. Why we need this ability to dream in order for our brain to kind of function properly. Because we understand what not being able to dream does. You can sleep, but if you don't dream within a suitable amount of hours, you have terrible consequences to your psyche. So because of that idea, kind of ties into this fictional world where you're able to dive into people's dreams. But what could it actually mean, these dreams? Is it a sign of our subconscious that's trying to tell us something that we should know about the future, or is it something trying to tell us something about the past and all this stuff? So at this point, there is a lot of clues and pieces. And it's kind of up to your discretion to figure out where it all fits. Did you guys have any hints or ideas about seeing this woman who was in the dream, this place that she was in? Did you guys have any inklings about what might be happening at this point?
I think it's subconsciously Dante remembers being there, remembers this woman, but it happened 6 years ago, or past 6 years ago, and he doesn't remember it.
Right. Yeah, my other thought was maybe that he was the killer and remembering it, or that, this was tied into him choosing victims somehow.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I mean, I have theories too. I've seen I accidentally went down the wrong route and saw something I probably shouldn't have.
That's okay. That's okay. And Matt did as well. So I'm guessing some of that information might actually be harming you guys' actual path to the truth more than it is helping you, just as much as it could possibly help you. And that's why I wasn't stressed about you guys seeing things that you're not technically supposed to be able to see at this point. And we'll get into theories and stuff like that at the end of the podcast session for today, so we'll save that for now. But if you got a clue in a certain section and that stuck out to you, feel free to let me know, and then we can discuss it. And I also like the whole joke that Aiba had. How do you put a giraffe in a refrigerator?
Oh, God. I don't know.
What do you think, Matt?
Chop it up?
No, you open up the door and put the giraffe in the refrigerator. Well, then, let's a follow-up question is, how do you put an elephant in a refrigerator?
You open the door, take the giraffe out, and put the elephant in.
That's right.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, I like that joke by I thought that it was pretty funny. So, thinking back on the investigation, the current mystery was, okay, so we know that the body was moved after she was killed, but we don't know how it was moved because there were no cars nearby, according to the camera data that Aiba has. We don't know where the left eye is, and we also don't know who sent the message to Mizuki in the first place to meet her at the Bloom Park to discover the body in the first place.
That's right.
So these are all questions that we have no answers to. And Mizuki, of course, is non-responsive. She's still in a state of shock and not able to talk. So we decide that it's time for us to go ahead and sync, which is kind of the way for one person to enter another person's subconscious through the machine.
Without consent, I guess, since she's not speaking? Or did she agree to it?
Well, I don't think she can agree to anything at this point.
Yeah.
But based on the idea and the circumstances, you can kind of understand, like, she has no legal guardian, and the only person that could be considered legal guardian actually happens to be Date himself, right?
Yeah.
So, given the circumstances, the Somnium begins, and this is actually our first full true Somnium. The other one was more of a tutorial. Like, Drew, do you remember the scenery of this particular Somnium for Mizuki?
Yeah. Oh man, it was the Bloom Park. There was the merry-go-round, and there was a bird cage over top of the merry-go-round. The merry-go-round itself was spinning very, very fast, like 200 miles an hour, and there was a storm going on. Like a lightning storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All ominous signs keeping us from whatever's in there.
Yeah. It gave off a feel of franticness.
Yeah, and not only that, the aforementioned horses that were impaled in the actual Bloom Park, in the Somnium, they're all like screaming and like wailing about and stuff like that. It's a very ghastly scene, and the sky is pitch red, everything's dark and gloomy, and there's this creepy merry-go-round song that's playing the entire time, which makes it even worse.
Yeah. That was a big one. So that one's crazy. The next one is probably the craziest for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one was relatively simple. Mm-hmm. I didn't ever have to restart or anything like that because it was it's easing you into it.
Yep.
There's only 3 mental locks, I believe. And this is the first one where you can choose a different path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have to restart it from failing, but I did choose the wrong path and played a bit before having to restart this and go down the correct path.
Yep.
Yeah, you played a few hours afterwards.
Yeah, you got a head start for our next section. Well, next session possibly. But all things considered, the idea is that Mizuki is clearly in a state of trauma. This is like Mizuki's a literal 12-year-old girl. Even though she's a very exceptional person for her age in a lot of different ways that we'll continue to discuss. She has seen something that is going to haunt her for the rest of her days. You know, the idea that seeing her own biological mother killed and then paraded on a merry-go-round, where she had previously had positive memories, is something that could basically shock any person to their core. So the state of the Somnium kind of shows her state of mind in a lot of ways. So that's kind of where we're at. And the idea, the Somnium activities themselves aren't too important, but there is this one particular choice where, like Drew said, there's branching path, where you have 2 different bird cages that you can approach in a certain situation. One is a bird cage that has pictures that is torn up inside of it. The other one has a bunch of balloons. And for the purposes of our playthrough, just to keep things nice and consistent, we chose the left bird cage, which has those pictures of the pictures that are kind of torn up in there. Do you guys remember what the picture was?
Yeah, it was a picture of her and her mom and her dad at the park.
Mm-hmm. And they
seemed like they were having a fun time.
Yeah, they seemed like they're having a good time. And then you basically put those pictures together, and going through a couple of more steps, you basically are able to approach Mizuki, who's still trapped within the place, and kind of. I think there might be some other ways, but in this particular instance, I think I gave her a hug to kind of let her know that she's going to be safe, she's going to be okay. And once she's out of the Somnium, she was able to talk again. Did you guys do something differently to get her to snap out of it?
No, I hugged her.
Yep, I hugged her.
Okay. I think in this particular case, it might have been the only option, but at the same time, it seemed to be the only one that made sense in the context of the story. And it's going to make more and more sense as you learn about Mizuki and the relationship that she had with her parents, which is, pretty tragic on itself. So another thing that we noticed is as this Somnium was wrapping up, so we actually saw a strange figure.
Yeah.
At the corner of the park, where it looks like it's like a place that's kind of like leading away to like a grassy field or something like that. And we don't know who this person is, but they did certainly exist within the Somnium, and we weren't able to get a good look at them before the Somnium ended.
Yeah.
You're a mysterious man with no features.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, Mizuki has snapped out of it, and she's trying to help us out, but at the same time, she seemed very tight-lipped about what she's willing to tell us. Like, for example, she won't tell us who sent the message that brought her there. And she's also, I'm not sure about you guys' first impression. I thought Mizuki was going to be, like, a nicer kid.
Yeah.
Initially, but she's very hostile to Date, being very frank about everything and constantly insults him about different things. So that's kind of where you're at. So you end up going to Bloom Park with Mizuki, and you learn that Date actually has been living with Mizuki for about 4 years now. And
he's kind of the caretaker over.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he's been looking after her since she was 8. So for a long part of her life, a long part of her short life, he has been taking care of her. But you don't quite understand why just yet. So
yeah.
One of the things that you discover from the information that you got from the Somnium, trying to figure out what the strange figure was, we find out that there's actually an abandoned subway tunnel near the park. And checking the information, we actually found out that that tunnel was actually used by a vehicle, and it happens to be Renju's car.
Yes.
And not only that, we learned that the message that Mizuki got also came from his phone.
That's right.
So the evidence seems to be very damning. So if the only car in that scene of the crime that we can locate was his car, and the message that sent Mizuki over there was from his phone, then it seems very damning, if nothing else. But unfortunately, we're not able to find him at this point. We don't know where he is, and he gave the report and basically peaced out. So we're kind of on a path to try to find and locate where Renju is.
Yes.
Do you remember from this point, Drew?
I think so. We go to the restaurant that he owns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's a seafood restaurant, I'm thinking.
It's like a seafood or like maid cafe kind of business.
Yeah. And when we go there, we find him.
Which is crazy because I spent hours looking for him in the other play session. Didn't know where he was, and then started back down this path, and you find him pretty quick.
Yeah. He's dead.
Oh yeah.
So we go up to so it's on the second floor, and when we get off the elevator, he is strung up by a hook that is in his mouth, like a fish.
A giant fish hook, yeah.
Yeah. And he is also missing his left eye. And there are bruises around his neck. And it seems like the cause of death would be strangulation. And he's being held up by a wire with the hook. And the wire is then split into 3 and connected to these beer kegs. Beer kegs are heavy enough to hold him up there.
Yeah, that's... Just think about like Mizuki, who just kind of snapped out of the shock of having found her mother in that state, and now just after, like literally like hours after finding her father in an even more horrifying scenario. It's oh man, it's just awful.
That we do decide to do a little bit of investigating here while we're here. There's a couple of things that we do find. Obviously, we find his eye is missing. We figure out the cause of death. But the more important thing is there's a barrel sitting there, and we look inside the barrel and we find Renju's watch.
That was a tough one for me because I looked at the barrel once and didn't notice that the watch was in there, or didn't notice that I could X-ray it, and then spent a lot of time clicking on every single thing multiple times in this scene before I got back to it and stumbled back on. Oh, right, I just missed this.
Yeah,
missed this one thing.
One good thing, at least in this kind of scenario, is that if you play the older Ace Attorney games where you're kind of like pointing and clicking on things to examine them, is that they allow you to leave the place before you've seen everything that you need to in Ace Attorney. So you end up bouncing between different locations, not understanding what you failed to notice. But at least in this case, they make you stay exactly where you need to be until you discover what you need to. So even if you get stuck, you'll eventually stumble onto it eventually. And the other thing that happened before we actually decided to go back to the scene of the crime is that when we went back to HQ to discuss what's going on, because now there's 2 killings and 2 instances of 2 murder suspects or 2 murdered individuals that have had their left eye removed, this has now become a serial murder case. And now we kind of understand that there might be something going on. And previously, 6 years ago, there was a case called the Cyclops Killer, where 4 bodies were found in the mountain. And the only interesting thing is that in that particular case, the right eyes were removed. And all 4 victims were young women. And according to the information that the HQ has, is that they never been captured. But when Date says like, hey, the Cyclops killer guy is killing again, they're very, very firm on that. It can't be the old Cyclops killer. It must be either a new one or a copycat killer, because it can't definitely be the old one. But they won't tell Date why, which is kind of frustrating. But we'll get there eventually. But yeah, going back to the location with the barrel and the wristwatch.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we find that there. We find that very interesting. Like, what the hell? Why is this watch in here? And we get other things about that location at a later time when we're basically assessing again. Trying to imagine if there's any other evidence we find here.
There's a bit of evidence in terms of the records from the elevator, where there is a record of the elevator being used the night before around the time of the murder. So meaning that the elevator was most likely used to transport the body upstairs.
Right, right. So yeah, and we at this point we really have no suspects for this one because our main suspect is now strung up.
Yep.
So we're kind of back to square one. So we have to go ask around people who knew him. Obviously, Mizuki was at the police station. So we're trying to figure out, all right, well, who's been around him? Oh, Oda's been around him. Anybody who's been at Lemnis Gate. Aset's been around him. Mm-hmm. So we're going to need to figure out where these 2 people are. So we have to go and check out with Oda. So we go to his residence, which also happens to be a restaurant. But Oda's not there. We do end up talking to his mother. I have her, Mayumi?
Yeah, Mayumi.
Mayumi. And Mayumi, when we talk to her, she's kind of in a fit right now. She's like, I don't know where he is. He's probably with that witch that she keeps calling her. And like, what witch you talking about? He said that internet celebrity he's always gawking over. Oh, Aset. Gotcha. Okay. And I'm trying to think of anything else that she has. I know at the restaurant we find, we observe a few things. She has a knife that has like floral patterns on it. Seems like she was getting ready for the next dinner group to come in, kind of thing.
Yeah, not a very well attended restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no,
nobody's there.
No. And her husband's out. He's probably going to getting some supplies. kind of thing. And we're like, okay, well, if you see Oda, please let him know that we're looking for him. I can't remember if there's anything else we learn here.
I think that's about it, but I think this is around the time where you feel the notion that there is something off about this place and her. You don't know exactly what it is, but there is something that either she isn't telling us or something else that might be going on. Which makes sense. I mean, if she's trying to protect her son, right? You don't want to be telling the detective everything, but there might be something else on top of that, which we'll learn in the future.
Yeah. So the only other thing we can do is try to locate Aset. And I can't remember where we find her. Did we find her at Lemniscate?
So we go to Lemniscate, and she's actually there, but she's recording a podcast and not available to talk. So we end up leaving a card for Ota, flirting with the receptionist a little bit, of course, and then taking our business to the bar.
That's right. We go to the bar. Is that where we take Mizuki with us?
Yes. We take Mizuki, but at the same time, we learn some very valuable things at this place because we have a bit of I guess like an information dump to some degree, where we learned that this is actually where we met Renju for the first time 4 years, and then 4 years ago, that's around the time where he was taking care of Mizuki. He was asked by Renju to actually take care of Mizuki. As he was recently divorced at that time, and he was very busy, unstable, and it's one of those situations where you kind of learn the kind of parents that Mizuki has. Renju and Shoko are not great parents. Renju clearly prioritizes his work more than his daughter, and Shoko, possibly because of her upbringing without a lot of love and attention, she kind of treats Mizuki the same kind of way, and she tends to maybe get a little violent with her when she doesn't behave, And can you expect like an 8-year-old child to behave at all times? That's obviously a very unreasonable thing to do. So because of that, I think Date understands the need for Mizuki to be in a different place. It's not a good place for her, so he decides to take her in, which is very nice of him, because I think given the circumstances of his own situation about not knowing anything past the last 2 years where he has been, around and being a detective and everything, being tasked with taking care of like an 8-year-old child might be a bit too much of an ask to literally everyone else. But, I think this is kind of like those little hints at the character of Date, because you see this guy who's kind of a horn dog and a bit of a smart mouth, but he truly does care about people. And I think that's one of the things I liked about it. They don't really tell you straight out, but it's these little things that he does and he did in the past that kind of tells you the person that he is.
Yeah, definitely.
Did they make any indication of whether Date was a detective prior to 6 years ago? Or is that just all still kind of unclear?
So at this point of story, I don't think they go into it. There's going to be a later time where Boss is going to give us more information in terms of Date's history. But at this point, we don't really know. It's kind of up to our imagination. One more thing that we learned at the bar is that the Renju apparently had dealings with the Yakuza gang, who's has their territory here called the Kumakura gang.
Yep.
And
that's right.
Yep, this is the place where we decide to say, like, hey, we can't take Mizuki to a literal Yakuza den, so we're gonna give Mama, who's the owner of the bar, hey, like, can you please take care of Mizuki? And we kind of slip out, saying that, like, hey, we'll be right back. But then we end up taking the trip down to the Yakuza office.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And we go to the Yakuza office, and these guys look straight out of Kamurocho.
Yep.
There's two guys sitting there, and the kind of the boss sitting behind the desk there. They don't take too kindly to police being there, so they and we're like, hey, we just want to get some information. Well, they don't want to have anything. They don't want to have anything to do with it, so they actually attack us.
Which also feels familiar.
Which also feels very familiar.
That's true. You guys been dealing with that for the last couple of... How many months have you guys played the Yakuza games for at this point? Has it been like half a year?
Half a year. Over half a year.
Over half a year. So this is
we
very
started it
familiar
last year.
territory for you guys.
Yeah.
For sure. One thing that we did note is that at the office, there seems to be like a cigarette butt that's still kind of smoking. And checking the information with the thermal imaging that IBA provides, we noticed that there was actually someone sitting at the sofa who was smoking not until just a couple minutes ago. And this is where we kind of get suspicion that someone was here. Why don't you tell me the information, you know? And then that's when they decide to attack us with some pretty hardcore gear.
Oh, the fucking minigun.
Yeah, right in the office.
Yeah, a dude pulls out a minigun and starts shooting at us. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time I've had like an action scene. Mm-hmm. So like, oh crap, I've actually got to aim and shoot something and stop something. But we're able to disarm those guys and knock them out. And of course the boss is just still kind of sitting there. And I found it interesting because Date, I think this is where his memories kind of lapsed. Like he's like, "You're not the boss. Where's the actual boss?" And he's like, "That's my dad. He's dead."
I think that's not his dad. I think that's his brother.
His brother?
Yeah, I believe his brother Rohan is his name. But Rohan, according to what Moma said, who's the new chairman of the Kumukura, died last year via suicide, and Moma basically took over 6 years ago. So there's that number again, 6. You know, so it's one of those things. And you mentioned the action scene, but this is also the first instance where Date whips out, or rather, Aiba exploits one of Date's weaknesses to a particular type of magazine that gets him really excited and increases his reflexes by 3.6 times. That allows him to dodge a bullet, quite literally, and take action. The scene where he yells "porno mag" in slow motion never fails to crack me up. Just at the top of his lung, he just yells "porno mag."
It's an interesting trigger for a superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And he starts looking on the ground for some kind of magazine that doesn't exist there, and he's able to take action accordingly. That pops up later again, but
in an even more ridiculous way.
Yeah. It one-ups it every single time, but it's very stupid and played for laugh for sure. That's one of the kind of contrast between how serious and how crazy a lot of these murder scenarios are compared to a lot of the silly, dumb action sequences there are in the game. I can see people not liking it, but I personally found it to be very funny and delightful.
So yeah, after calming everybody down, Date's like, "All right, I know you're back there in the back room. Come out." And a dude comes out. How do I explain this guy? He's wearing a kimono.
Yep.
I thought he was like a Yakuza boss of some sort.
He kind of looks the profile, right? Like a very regal, like high up in the rankings Yakuza kind of guy.
Yeah. Getting up there in years.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize him. It's Sojima, is that his name?
So Sojima, and he's a congressman.
He's a congressman. What the hell's a congressman doing in a Yakuza den? And he really doesn't want to talk to us at all.
Nope.
He's like, I don't want to have anything to say to you. Okay, well, what the hell are you doing here? It's none of your damn business. But that's definitely some big hits right there. Oh, we got a congressman in cahoots with the Yakuza. But he does give us a little bit more, or no, he doesn't actually. It's I think the Yakuza boss
Moma
gives us a little bit more information, saying that it wasn't just Renju who was with us. His ex, she was working with us too. Like, what kind of work was she doing? Some kind of scam stuff.
Some shady real estate stuff, it sounded like.
Yeah, shady real estate, doing fraud in people and stuff like that. So both victims were in cahoots with the Yakuza using them. Also, there's a congressman here in cahoots with them as well. You're like, okay. The plot thickens, I guess.
Indeed. But unfortunately for us, all the Yakuza people actually have like excellent alibis because they had like a meeting thing where they were all accounted for. So it's
Yep.
clear that they were not present for these actual two murders at the very least.
Yep. So we have to just basically end it there. But after that, we do finally get to talk to Iris, Aset.
Actually, we actually get a call from Lemniscate saying that, hey, Ota is here.
That's right.
And
That's right.
on the way to Lemniscate, we actually get a call from a detective relaying a message from a prisoner who only refers to himself by the number 89. And he says that he knows Shoko's killer, and he already predicted that there would be a second murder, which we verified by Renju's death. So we don't know who this person is, but this person seems to say that, like, hey, I have the answer if you want to talk and if you want to try to get me out of here. But we don't try to get this information just yet because
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Like you're jogging my memory right now.
Yeah.
Like, oh right, that did happen. We never even followed up with that. What the hell?
Well,
yeah, there's
we
a lot
have
of threads.
Yeah, exactly. We have our immediate threats to follow. So some dude saying, you know, like, hey, I know who the killer is. It's not exactly on Date's top priority, which I understand. So
Right.
We do go back to Lemniscate, and Ota confirms after a little bit of coaxing that he did indeed see Renju and Iris walk out of the building and get into a car.
That's right.
So if Iris was the last person to have seen Renju, she might be a suspect. So we decide
That's right.
to, bring Iris in and basically interrogate her a little bit in terms of figuring out what's going on.
Yep. So yeah, she's during the interrogation. This is where we have another part, like a gameplay piece, where we have to present evidence. I couldn't do this, Well, yeah, you could. So I can't lift that guy's body if I killed him. How could I even move his body? Well, we found his watch inside this barrel. You could easily roll a barrel around, couldn't you? Yep. You had access to his car. You were in his car.
She also mentioned that she didn't have the strength to overpower a fully grown adult man, being, a woman and all. But they noted that after the autopsy, there was actually sedatives found in Renju's blood, meaning that he was most likely knocked out and then strangled to death, which means literally anyone could have done it. So It almost looks like all the evidence that we have gathered from the restaurant and the circumstantial evidence, as well as, kind of being the last person to have seen him, all points to Iris being the possible killer for Renju.
Yep.
So because of that, we decide that, like, hey, we should get some more information. But she does something very suspicious in a way where we find her actually secretly texting someone during the interrogation, and when we snatch her phone away, she's actually messaging Ota to not tell us about that thing.
That thing. Yeah.
And she obviously won't say what it is. So, like, hey, we have enough evidence to say with the just cause to be able to sync with her to get some additional information.
That's right. And so we sync with her, and to me, this is the craziest one.
Yeah.
Because it's like...
Yeah.
It's like a warehouse.
I thought this was the hardest one, too.
Really?
There was a lot of stuff involved in that one. Yeah, I would say this was probably the hardest one. I did have to retry once here.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, God, man. It's just the freaking sounds and the music in this one was like disturbing as hell. It's like it's just a woman screaming in the background.
I've been watching a murder repeatedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the nail. Like, disturbing is the one word that I would use. If you consider the idea that Iris is like this pretty like bubbly 18-year-old girl who's like an idol, and you have Mizuki who's also like a 12-year-old girl, and they both had these really horrifying somniums based on their previous traumas and everything. So you never know what you're going to get, once you delve into these somniums. and it's difficult to predict what kind of things you're going to see. But the interesting thing about the Iris Somnium specifically is that you're seeing a lot of information here. Do you remember as far as like the murdering and how that ties into like the possible Cyclops killings and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it was all the mental locks revealed. She was either seeing it or doing it. We don't know which one of the original Cyclops killings. Like one person was beaten, one person was shot, one person was strangled, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's all the actual how the original Cyclops killer had killed people, which happened 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Which she's 19 now, so she would have been 13.
Yeah, so the likelihood of her being the original Cyclops killer would be very extreme, right? The idea that I think she's 18 now, so she would have been 12. So that a 12-year-old girl could basically capture and kill 4 adult women in various different ways, especially the active ways that they show. The way that the Somnium works is that you're supposed to try to reenact the events of the murders of each 4 individuals. You don't see the people that's committing the act. You don't see the picture. I mean, you don't see the individual faces of the people that are dying either. So it's very much up to interpretation, but she seems to have very intimate knowledge. Like Drew said, it seems likely that either she was the one perpetrating the murders or at least present. But given the circumstances of her age, it most likely seems like she was probably present at the location rather than the one that's committing it. Because if you look at the way the information is portrayed, you see a lot of unknowns, despite seeing how they die being consistent with the files that we have for the Cyclops killing.
Yes.
And did they imply at all that it's the same person from the other Somnium, or is that just assumed to be kind of a default if they can't remember the details of a person? It's just this kind of blue humanoid form.
Oh, yeah, that's a default blue humanoid form. You can't, So it's one of those things where, you know how if you ever watch like Detective Conan or something like that, they have this like a black silhouetted person. That's just kind of like a person of mystery of, it doesn't point to a specific person, so that it kind of opens it up the mystery to be whoever could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've never watched Detective Conan, but I have watched Detective Conan meets Lupin the Third.
I don't think I watched that. Was it good?
It's actually really good.
Oh, sweet. I might need to track that down. I love Detective Conan and Lupin the Third. Nice.
Yeah, I like Lupin a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, so I accidentally did the wrong path here.
Did you complete that path to its completion, Drew? Or
yeah,
you did. Okay, so you saw something a little ahead of time.
I saw something.
Yeah,
I saw something. I was like, ooh.
Don't tell Matt. Not yet.
I won't.
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, uh-oh, this is looking bad.
Oh, the plot is, plot thickens.
Yeah. But, after, so obviously she's like, okay, well, did she do them? I don't know if she could do them, but she obviously was there. Cause she's recreating these acts perfectly in her dreams. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out when we wake her up.
Oh, Drew, I think we might be confusing the two. I think the one that we're describing in terms of the individual person being murdered actually happens on the other path. The one that we were discussing previously was the one with the animal pictures being killed in the same way that the murdered women were. But it's not as explicit. And the last thing that we see in this particular Somnium is that there is an unknown person kissing who looks very much like Sosajima, the congressman.
That's right.
Yeah, but instead of the body of a man, he has the body of a woman instead. So it's a very, very weird detail. It's like he's unconscious, but he has the body of a woman, and someone is kissing him. And you can interpret that in so many different ways. And when we kind of interrogate Iris about that, she says like, well, I know who Sosajima is. He's a famous congressman. I've seen him on TV. But we don't know if she has any connection with him or vice versa. So not a lot of information gathered from that Somnium, unfortunately, outside of the fact that Iris might be a more disturbed individual than we initially pegged her for.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So it just now points more fingers at Sosajima for the time being. Gosh, after that.
Okay, let me jog the memory a bit then. So at this point, we can Ota actually threatens Date because we're holding Iris without any solid proof evidence. Everything that we have on her is basically circumstantial, right?
That's right.
So because of that, we gotta bring her back. And Ota says hey, I'll tell you what that thing is if you just bring her out of there. I don't want her to be under custody and stuff like that. So we end up bringing Iris to the diner, the Masashita diner where Ota lives. I
like how he quotes law at him as well.
Yeah, almost like he prepped for it, right?
Yeah.
All right.
But when we get to the diner, something happens.
That's right. That's right. So we're wanting to interrogate him a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, take a look at that picture right there. I want to show you something." And of course, being the dumbass we are, we look at the picture, and he clocks us over the head and knocks us out. Luckily, though, we're knocked out. Iba's still running, and she records the whole thing. But yeah, he runs off with Iris. And when do we see that video playback? Is it later?
Yeah, so Date regains consciousness about 5 hours, so he got a nice nap there.
Yeah.
And then we're basically headed in the car. We're headed over to locate Iris and Ota. And we all of a sudden get alerted by saying hey, there's this live stream going on.
Yeah.
And the scene of that is pretty graphic, where it looks like Iris is on an ice cutting table with a huge giant saw. And her left eye is missing and bleeding, just like all the other victims in the case so far. And
that's right.
All of a sudden, someone in a polar bear costume shows up and activates the saw, slowly bringing it down on her torso, and it's basically about to kill her. But all of a sudden, Ota shows up. He turns off the machine and goes off screen to apparently fight the polar bear.
That's right.
So we find out where the live stream is being held. It says some it's called like a cold storage warehouse.
Cold storage unit. Yeah.
And we hightail it over there as soon as we can.
That's right. And yeah, when we get there, not only do we find Iris laying there, we also find Ota laying there. Ota has been stabbed. And the polar bear is nowhere to be seen.
Right, but the good news is that both Iris and Ota are alive, even though they're both not in great condition. And Iris goes into surgery, and Ota also goes into surgery as well.
Yes. So now we have another crime scene. And we have to investigate it. So yeah, Iris, missing a left eye. Looks like the killer didn't get the job done. The polar bear costume. Nobody knows where the polar bear costume is. Nobody knows where the polar bear is. We try to figure out the live stream stuff. Looks like the computer, the camera were bought from pawn shops. So good luck trying to figure out where that stuff came from. And then What else is there?
So at this point, we have a variety of locations that we can go to, and just like Drew said about the crime scene at the cold storage, we did notice additional things. Like there are actually 2 cars in front of the cold storage warehouse. One is the Matsushita van for like the restaurant, and another car is a station wagon, which was reported stolen. And after further investigation of the inside, there's this chocolate packet on the
chocolate. That's right.
And these are like special chocolates where if you open them, they have like special collectible stickers and stuff like that around. And Date used to collect them for a while for like Mizuki and himself and stuff like that. So he remembers what those were. And at this point, we can go to several different locations based on the evidence. Since Ota is clearly connected to this event, we decided to go over to the diner to talk to Miyumi. And this is where we get all the information in terms of what's going on, because Ota has been stabbed, but Mayumi is actually still here. She doesn't seem to be cognizant of like what's going on. She's basically just like waiting for her son and husband to come back home. But in truth, her husband's been dead for 5 years, and she's been suffering from dementia for many years. And not only that, the diner has also been closed for 8 years as well. So she's kind of been living in like this fragment of time where her husband was alive and the diner was busy and bustling, but now that the diner has kind of gone to ruin, her husband's been dead, and her son is Ota, which is probably the worst.
Bad enough.
Yeah, worst case scenario for that one, because he's a 24-year-old guy. He's not really doing anything with his life, So it is what it is, but we learn all that stuff, and we also decide that, like, hey, what's going on with this whole Sosajime guy? Why was he in the, Iris' Somnium? We gotta figure out what's going on. So we go to his mansion to figure out what's happening, and he basically says, like, hey, I have an alibi, I was just home the whole time, and he says, like, oh, my bodyguards can confirm that, but of course we can't take what the bodyguards say at face value, because they have a vested interest in protecting their clients, and also for some reason the cameras at the mansions has been offline for the last few days. How very convenient for him.
Right.
Yeah. So evidence kind of piling up against So for sure, as he's being very suspicious as to what he's been doing. We kind of go back home. We go back to the hospital. Luckily, Iris' surgery was successful, and so is Ota. But at the same time, like when we consider all the possibilities and connections with Renju and Shoko, and because Hitomi also knew everyone involved, perhaps either she might be a suspect herself, or she might have some information that might be helpful to us. So we kind of put that into the back of our mind, and we decide to go back home where Mizuki is there.
Yes. And we didn't mention the video that we saw.
Ibis video?
Yeah, after we got knocked out.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah. When we get knocked out, we're laying on the floor. Oda is with Iris. He's like, come on, we're going to go. I'm going to go get the car, and we're going to leave. And she's like, okay, well, where are we going? He's like, let's just go. And Oda's mom approaches them. She's mad. But then Iris approaches her, gets really close to her, and she gets real quiet. And then Oda shows back up. Come on, let's go. Iris then leaves with Oda. And I was like, what the hell was that? Because I was watching it, and I was like, did she say something to her? What did she say to her? To make her just get quiet like that? Because she was yelling at her, like, oh, you're a witch, you're ruining my son, stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's a very strange,
that it is.
Strange video. Well, eventually we do learn what happened.
Right, but we also see that Mayumi actually takes up after them too, after they leave. Tries to kind of go after them as well. So we get some additional information in that. Thankfully, Aiba was online and being able to capture all this footage, so we have some additional hints.
Yep. But going back home, Mizuki's there. I'm going to say sulking because that's what she does. she has every right to be sulking.
Yes. So not only are both of her parents dead from a apparent serial killer, her best friend was attacked and her left eye removed. And her other friend has been stabbed and is in the hospital. So I think she, as a 12-year-old girl, I think she has every right to be sulking. But she's also doing something that seems a little out of character for a 12-year-old girl when we see it here at Date's place.
Yeah, she's. I actually calculated it.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like it was probably about 380 something pounds. She was just bench pressing. 380 something pounds. I'm like, oh, that's just some anime shit.
Yeah.
No. She really is.
I thought it was one of those like novelty weight kind of things. Kind of like the
foam?
ones that are like like foam or balloons or something like that. But like, no, that's totally real.
Yeah.
As far as
we go into a little bit of history with Date and Mizuki. She is crazy powerful.
Yep.
So
is this where they got into his training? Her?
Yeah. That's what they showed the past. So Mizuki got bullied for having kind of a weird, let's say, parenting situation, and she kind of was being abused by other bullies and such. And Date saying like, hey, this is I can't take over for what's happening to you. Otherwise, this is going to make things worse. So you need to be able to protect yourself. So he decides to take her under his wing and train her in like martial arts and stuff like that. And he basically says like, hey, show me what you can do. And she basically shows him a straight punch that creates shockwaves.
Yes.
Yeah. So she is super human strong. And she also mentioned something interesting about her grandpa, who also has these really interesting tall tales about him, about things that shouldn't be possible from a human being. So it almost seems like there might be something going on with her side of the family that we don't quite know about just yet. So
another interesting fact about her grandpa, he owned the cold storage unit.
That he did.
And I was like, okay, well, there's another connection.
Yep.
Yeah, no shortage of connections on this one for sure.
I know, man. But we go into her past. We take her to a shrine and teach her how to fight. Find out she's a freaking Super Saiyan, and she's demanding that she comes along with Date on this. And we're like, okay, since I left you at a bar, I will take you along. And then from there, we start to try and, I think like we're having discussions in the car. I think we also get a phone call from the boss.
Right, we get some information on the forensics on that chocolate packet that we found in the cold storage. Yep. And apparently Mayumi's fingerprints are on the chocolate factory. And we also hear that Ota is actually conscious. So we go to see him at the hospital.
That's right. And we finally get out of Ota. Look, dude, what is the thing?
Yeah.
The thing that she was texting you about. What is it?
I'm surprised at this point, given all he's done and all he's been through, that he would have any resistance here, or that Date wouldn't just be able to, like, throw the book at him and be like, look, you can't keep hiding things and lying things. This has to end right now.
Yeah. And we kind of pressure him into telling us, because we're like, look, you could totally be the person doing this. He's like, how do you figure? Well, you and the polar bear were never on the screen at the exact same time.
That's right.
How do we know that you just pretended to do this and you stabbed yourself?
When you guys were watching the footage as it was happening in real time, did you guys also have that feeling too?
Yeah. It was very suspicious the way he like called it out and then ran off screen, and you definitely can't see it with the angle.
And then the wound that he actually ended up taking happens to just not be fatal. The polar bear disappears without a trace. All these little pieces of evidence that make Ota more and more suspicious to what's going on here.
Also, another fun fact, the blade that he was stabbed with was the same blade that his mother has with the floral patterns. He could have easily just took that stab himself with it.
That's right. And we've also seen this behavior. Think about what's been established so far, right? Ota is very well and willing to antagonize the person he loves just so that he can become the Shining Knight to save
That's
her
right.
for credibility's sake. So we've seen the behavior. Obviously, this is a lot more extreme, of course. But because there is a pattern here, we can't help but suspect him to be someone. And if that wasn't bad enough, while he's being interrogated at the hospital, he was actually hiding a knife under the cover.
That's right. And if he even tries to deny it, I wouldn't have done that. Well, maybe you didn't do it. Maybe you were just in cahoots with Iris about it. Iris could have easily have said, "Hey, do all this to make it look like I have nothing to do with it."
That's right.
And he's like, "Well, that's bullshit." Okay, then tell me what the thing was. And the thing was, he actually saw her the night that Renju was killed. In Renju's car. By herself.
Driving the car, yep.
Driving the car.
Without a license, too.
Yeah, without a license. And Renju was nowhere to be seen. And she was like, "Hey, don't tell anybody you saw me." And then drove off. That's pretty suspicious.
Very.
Yep.
And also, where was Renju? Maybe in the trunk? In a barrel? After being killed?
Possibly. But at the same time, if she was the murderer that killed Renju, who did that to her? Would it have been a plan between Iris and Ota? We don't know at this point.
Yeah. But that's definitely something we're thinking.
Absolutely.
Like easily she's trying to get heat off of her, so she's going to turn herself into a victim with the help of Ota. So Ota doesn't want to have anything to do with that. I'm like, okay, fine. If you want to clear her name, we're going to have to go into your head. And that's exactly what we do.
Yep.
So we take him to the police station with stitches. And we strap him up to the machine and we go into his head. And once again, another Somnium where you can branch off. I started the wrong path, but then quickly corrected myself after I sent you a message saying, "Hey, is this the right one?" And you said, "Nope."
Yep.
And it's basically a recreation of what happened that night with the polar bear. But it's in a very Ota way.
It's
him being a hero.
Yeah, very very dramatized to make himself look good.
Yeah. And so there's we had to do both paths for this recording. The first path basically is just a retelling. It's not like you can't see the face. He bests the polar bear, and as he's about to take the polar bear's mask off, he gets stabbed.
Yep.
And that's all we get.
Yeah, but we do see that the knife that he gets stabbed with is definitely the knife from the diner.
That's right. So, coming back out of the Somnium, okay, well, what actually happened? And at that point, his mom comes in and she's like, "Look, I did it."
Yep.
Did you really do it?
Yeah, from the beginning, everyone's like, "Okay, all right, I don't think so."
Yeah.
No offense, man, but you suffer from dementia. On top of, do you even know how to live stream something?
Right.
Do you know what live streaming is?
Yeah.
Where'd you get the stuff? I found it in the garbage. What? You found a computer and a camera in the garbage. You're obviously covering. You're covering for your son. And we have to prove it to her, basically. Like we do with the Phoenix Wright stuff. And
can you fail those at all? Or does it just tell you that's not the right combination? And then
So
yeah, I was like, no, that's not right.
You get a reward for doing it perfectly, but you can't fail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the reward?
there are these files that actually delve into additional things that you can know about certain situations and certain characters. And it's the same thing with Somniums. If you finish a Somnium with time left on the clock, you also get a bonus as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
There's actually this whole entire section with files, and a lot of them are actually hidden away and collectibles that you actually will unlock by doing things very well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I screwed this up a couple times, so I don't know if I got that file. But, yeah, so we basically proved to her, look, you couldn't have done this. We get it. You're trying to cover for your son. And if you don't, fine. If you want us to explore this route, we will do a Somnium with you. And that's what we do. This Somnium was so depressing.
It was.
Oh my god. Yeah, and
before we delve into the Somnium, there's actually one other thing. Well, two other things that we discover.
okay.
One is the taxi that was also headed over to the cold storage, which is the method that Mayumi was able to get to the cold storage.
That's right.
She was following.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
No, it's all good. It's not that important given the circumstances, but it's definitely still a piece of the puzzle. So worth mentioning. Yep. So that's the thing, and the taxi driver is also very affluent as well. It seems a little suspicious to me for whatever reason. But yes, so that's one thing. And the other thing is that we actually go over to the mansion because we're actually waiting for the Somnium device to be repaired because it went down for a time. And we want to talk to Sosajima. And when we go over there, there's actually nobody there. No bodyguard, no Sosajima. But we smell something weird coming from the large vase. And
that's right. Does that happen before the Somnium?
That's right. It happens before the Somnium.
Holy crap, man. This took me. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
So this happens right before the Somnium. And
yeah.
We use our x-ray and see that there's body parts within that vase. So we, basically crack open the vase and then it's basically So's body sliced into so many different pieces. It's very gory.
Yes.
And it's pretty terrible. And for this particular case, not only does Ota and Mayumi have the alibis because they were obviously, in custody, but Iris also did as well because she's in a coma in the hospital. So she couldn't have possibly done this either. So whoever killed Sosajima in this particular instance couldn't have been any of the three that we're currently following as suspects as well. So we're like, okay, what the hell is going on? So at this point, the device is finally available. Let's get to the bottom of it, and we sync with Mayumi.
Yes, and this one is like going into the mind of somebody who's suffering dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
it's a memory that is completely fuzzy. It's also from different time periods because she's not remembering things correctly. And you're also going through different, like, Oda's a child, and then Oda's, going to college, and then Oda's drops out of college, and Oda is a piece of shit to his mom and his dad.
Yeah, spoiled kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, gosh, it was so sad. Because it was, you could see like how she slowly started going into dementia and her family not realizing it.
Yeah, and the husband dying from basically overwork. They basically kill themselves or overwork trying to keep the diner afloat, but because of the chemical spill and Bloom Park no longer being an attraction, the diner, even though it wasn't closed down because of the chemical spill, it basically lost all foot traffic right then and there. They were no longer able to keep it afloat, but they still believed that maybe they'll be able to get back up there, so they kept taking out on loans. They got multiple jobs, and the father eventually his body gave out and he passed away. And that's kind of the breaking point for Mayumi at that point when she lost her husband, that she finally kind of broke away into a full dementia and kind of lost herself. And I think in a lot of ways it was like really bittersweet because you see that the memory that she holds on to most as the most precious thing that she has is the moment where Ota kind of understands, like, like he's been like a bad son. He's not really being considerate of his mother, but you could still see that he obviously still cares for her, and so does the husband. And they give her the gift of the knife and the floral pattern apron and everything like that. And that was like a beautiful moment. And through that moment, she's able to like briefly kind of be elucidated, and understands, and kind of is able to tell Date exactly what happened, as far as like what she was doing at the time and everything. And we basically figure out that, like, yeah, okay, definitely was not Mayumi, definitely was not Ota that committed this crime. At this point, that's basically it for Mayumi. So do you guys remember what happened after that?
Yeah, the Mayumi tells us what she remembers, and basically, when Ota went to go get the car, Iris walked up to Mayumi, who had the floral knife, and she took the floral knife from her. And that's when, like, it wasn't, she was saying something to her. She was taking the knife from her, almost like she was getting prepared to do something.
Yeah.
And then they took off, and that's when she chased after them. And we figured out, okay, well, this is how everybody got to there. So Mayumi is following Ota in a taxi. Ota is in the van. During that time, Ota makes a stop. And while he is outside of the van takes off. So Ota then steals a car, which is the car that was found at the cold storage unit. Mm-hmm. And Mayumi shows up as well in a taxi.
Right. And Ota is able to follow the van because he ended up leaving his phone in the car, and using the GPS, he was able to track him down. So
that's right.
There is a lot of information missing, right? So we understand the sequence of events and, what was happening, but we don't know what was happening within the car with the van. Because, apparently, there's some stuff going on, but we don't know if it was Iris driving the van. Maybe someone got into the van when Ota left and kidnapped Iris during that time as well. So there are many different possible scenarios. So
was that what Ota was believing? He was saying that I think somebody got in the van and took off with her.
Yeah, he said that he might have heard Iris scream or something like that.
Right, right.
And he was obviously in a frenzy trying to follow them, so he ended up stealing that cart. But that's the information that we have from Mayumi. Nothing conclusive, but some aspects of what happened or what's going on to lead to the events at the cold storage is at least illuminated a bit.
Yeah, it's also kind of the sad progression of Ota being so mean to his mom when he was younger, but then he kind of realizes it. So within that kind of scope, I'm like, all right, well, he's grown up a bit. He's better to his mom now. He understands this. He wants to help her out. But if you flash forward to what's happening now, he's still making a lot of real bad decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Like knocking a cop out with a walk and stealing a car. I mean, he may be doing things for good reasons, but man, he is not making all great ones.
He's a screw up for sure, and he's in a situation where I think he's obviously hopelessly in love with this girl that obviously doesn't have feelings for him in the same way. But she also still noted that he really respects Ota in a lot of ways, kind of like her protector and friend as well. So kind of friend zoned at the same time, but at least he's a character of note in Iris's life. So, maybe he has a chance, man. You never know. That is if they, all get out of this nonsense alive. which we'll be discussing soon. There's actually one other thing that happens after the credits roll. So we have this nice moment. This ends up being kind of like Ota's designated ending, kind of understanding Ota's situation with his family and everything, and him kind of coming into terms with what's going on with his mother, and kind of affirming that he's gonna be there for her more, which is all nice because I think we all have our histories with our parents and stuff like that. So it can be. I thought it was very touching and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I cried at this.
Yeah. I mean, I teared up too, for sure. I think the unconditional love of a mother is something that I think almost everyone can relate.
Yeah.
So, but there's actually one other thing that happens after the credits. We get another piece of evidence that is quite shocking.
There's a zinger at the end, and damn if I can remember because I'm getting it mixed up with the one at the end of the last branch.
Okay, it happens. It deals with an eyeball being found.
Oh yeah,
in someone's stomach.
Within stomach, right?
No. So they did an autopsy completion with Renju, and they found Shoko's eyeball in his stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
What does that mean, fellas?
The same person killed both people.
What do you think, Matt? Is there a significance to that zinger?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think he went Hannibal Lecter on his ex-wife's side.
Ex-wife?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. That's perfectly fine. That's one of the questions that I'm going to be talking about at the end there. So, okay, let's move back. Previously, we were going to stop at this point and then end the first session, but because we ended up having another week of time, we went a little bit further.
Yeah. We decided to go back to Oda's Somnium.
That's right.
And take the next path. In the next path... Oof. Gosh.
So in this path, the big difference is that
the fight.
The fight is different. Where we actually ended up using a crane to knock the polar bear down, injuring him pretty severely in one of his legs to do so, injure in his left leg. And then after that point, he still gets stabbed trying to unmask the person. But that information with the left leg injury ends up being a pretty huge hint. Because now we're looking for a suspect that has an injured left leg. That's something that we can go by, so that's kind of one of the things that we can look at. And we're also taking Mizuki with us in this instance because she's kind of going stir crazy. Both of her parents are dead, her friends were assaulted and stuff like that. She can't just be, sitting at home and stuff like that, so she decides to go with us. And we can go to a lot of different places with Mizuki.
Yeah.
So I'll make it pretty simple as far as kind of top to bottom. And
so just for clarity, because this is a different path, did both paths happen and you're now just remembering more? Or is this like an alternate universe where this happened and not the other way?
So consider Branching Path as an alternative reality where things happen differently.
So we're not just revealing more of one story. These are intertwined, interrelated stories?
Possibly. You can kind of consider it intertwined in the way that it has the same characters, but I'm not going to delve much more into the logistics of how the storytelling works, because I believe that might be telling a little too much, so I'll leave it to your interpretation.
Yeah, the grand scheme of things, this may be significant.
Yeah,
I can't, I'm not going to... You guys should know my personality enough to the point where for sure I'm not going to be revealing things that is going to spoil the grand picture, but at the same time I might slide in a couple of hints here and there just for shits and giggles to see if you guys can figure it out. But I'll just leave it at that. But in this particular instance, consider it as like an alternative universe where things played out differently.
Yeah.
So, because of the situation, now we have this other alternative hint that we can go off of. Our path is a bit different, because previously in the other branch, we actually had no other follow-up other than the fingerprints on the chocolate packet, which led us to Mayumi and Ota and their connection. But in this case, we have a direct hint as to who the suspect in the polar bear suit was. And of course, because of the circumstances, we can verify that it's obviously not Ota, because Ota, doesn't have that injury to his left leg, right?
Right.
Okay, so we have a bunch of places that we can go with Mizuki. The first place that we can go is Bloom Park, and we kind of talk with Mizuki about her memories here, but we also, hear Mizuki's story about how she blames herself for her parents' murder, because she considers that all the negative things that happened to her parents was her fault. If she was, she's kind of like regretting that maybe if she was a better daughter, maybe if she listened better, they would have been together. They would never have been in this path where they were, working with like Yakuza and other things and doing terrible things that led to their death. And of course, we say that it's not Mizuki's fault because it obviously isn't, but that's how it is. When you're in situations like this, that you can't help but blame yourself. So we kind of understand it. But here is where we get the full picture as to the kind of person Shoko was. And yeah, I'm sympathetic to her plight to the point where she had a very terrible childhood of her own, where she wasn't loved and she was abused to some degree as well. But that does not excuse what you do to your own children at the same time, right? So being abusive to your child, like hitting them repeatedly, and then feeling like, oh, she's 8 years old, why isn't she just picking up after herself and doing everything I tell her? That's obviously not what an 8-year-old child is going to do, right? So she doesn't seem to understand that, and that's kind of ended up being a big point why Date ended up taking her in.
Yeah.
And we also go to the Ikumi Shrine, where this is the place where Date actually trained Mizuki in her martial arts and stuff like that. So this is the place where we actually see like Mizuki take her out like a bunch of trees and stuff like that, doing jump kicks and stuff. It's not like she's invincible or anything, but she's just very fast and very strong. Is what you can tell. It's like being able to jump, kick a tree, and knocking it down.
Yeah, almost like a video game character.
Yeah, basically. So, in that quiet moment, they kind of discuss their past, and they offer a quiet prayer, and then they kind of move on. And when Mizuki asks what Date prayed for, Date is like, oh, well, I just want to get out of here as soon as possible. And Mizuki kind of like pokes fun at him and is like, well, if you tell someone what you pray for, then it's less likely that it's going to come true. So she's kind of like poking fun at him the whole time while she's doing it. But, you don't really know what's happening there. We ended up going to the cold storage, and because of that injury to the left leg, we're like, wait a second. That huge blood puddle that the Ota was in also should contain the blood of the suspect.
Yep.
So we're like, okay, we need to put like a testing on that very, very quickly. And then we try to wait for results. We go to Lemniscate. Did you guys get the joke ending from here?
No.
No?
Joke ending? I don't think so.
If you keep talking to the receptionist, you can get a joke ending.
Oh.
Yeah.
What does it say? Does it say bad end?
It's very short and funny. Just check it out yourself. But it's a funny thing that happens. But
I thought I talked to her as much as I could. I'll have to go back and give us some more.
In this particular instance, there's like additional things that you can talk to her about, and you can kind of keep pressing one point to the point where you can kind of end up doing something that you probably shouldn't do as a detective, and the game ends. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then you can also go to the Sunfish Pocket, which is the seafood restaurant. Not anything of significant there. We go to the hospital to visit Ota, but there isn't anything really of note there. But we do learn of like Mizuki and Ota's like relationship. How Mizuki is like proofreading Ota's novels and stuff, kind of going to show that hey, they're pretty good friends, and also Mizuki is like very, very smart for her age.
Yeah.
They also go to Marble, which is the bar. Not too much information here. Mizuki does make a comment about like Mama and like the LGBT plus community, which I thought was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
She's very inclusive and understanding, which I thought was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to headquarters, and we basically they basically question Mizuki some more. And we finally get the blood test results. Message from our best friend Kagami.
Kagami.
Yes. Not Kanaiza.
Can't remember his name.
Not
I
Kanaiza.
barely remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta ask his name a couple of times, and then you'll get reminded sometimes.
Did you guys get the achievement for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
There are tons of Easter eggs in the game, and one of the names that he says, like, hey, Kodaka. That's actually the name of the Danganronpa director.
Oh,
Yeah. So there's a lot of like little hints and stuff like that. If you actually in the Mayumi's Somnium as well, if you click on the signature autograph walls of like famous people that they have there, you'll actually see the names of the directors of Danganronpa and I think some other games. Like 999 and other stuff like that, and they actually play the jingle, like a jingle from the appropriate games when you actually click on it. So tons of like fun
cool.
Easter eggs like that. But anyway, so we finally find out, and Kagami's like, "Oh, you got to come to the cold storage, man. I have some information." And they find an unknown trace blood of someone. They're not in the database. So we're like, "Shit, what are we supposed to do at this point?" But Drew, do you remember what happens at cold storage?
I do.
Right.
Somebody is watching us from a distance. Ooh. And
I actually really like how you're told that there's somebody creepy in front of you, so you can click on Kagami again. She's like, no, not him. The other guy in the background.
Yeah, and so we zoom in, and next to a car, there's a man standing there, and guess who it is? Sosajima.
With a limp.
And there's also something, with a limp. He's walking around with a limp. I'm like, oh shit, that's him. It's him. We gotta get him. Let's go. Let's get him. And of course, Iba's like, well, wait a minute. You need to slow your roll here. We don't know anything. We need to get DNA from him. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how do we do that? Oh shit. That's right. He was smoking cigarettes at the Yakuza den. I bet you $10 we could get DNA off that. So we go back to the Yakuza den. We show up there. Of course, they're like, what the hell are you doing back here? He's like, look, I'm looking for those cigarette butts. Where are they at? They're probably in the friggin' trash. Okay, well, can you go get them? And then the boss, Moma.
Moma, yeah.
Yeah, Moma. He's like, is this in regards to ASET?
I think he says Tessa.
Tessa.
Yeah.
That's right. He's like, is this in regards to Tessa? He's like, what do you mean about that? He's like, go get the freaking ashtrays. So he gets the guys to go get the ashtrays. He's like, yeah, I'd do anything for Tessa.
He seems very cooperative all of a sudden. So it's obviously very hinted that he is also a fan of Iris as well. And obviously, having seen what happened to her, he's going to cooperate in the investigation as much as he can to get the guy.
Yeah.
It gave me the vibes of, so do you remember Charles Lindbergh and his child was abducted? This is back in the, I think, 30s. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Not familiar.
Okay, Charles Lindbergh. You know who Charles Lindbergh is, right?
No.
He's the first guy to fly a plane across the Atlantic. His child was abducted, kidnapped, and Al Capone thought that was a horrible, crying shame, and he donated money to helping try and find her. And it reminded me of that situation. So anyway, yeah. So we're able to find the cigarette butts. We had to choose the right one. Luckily, I remembered it. And we send it off to get tested. It takes a little while. Eventually get it back. It's a match. Bingo.
Yep.
We got him. But the boss is like, nope, we're not pursuing this. What the hell are you talking about? Sosajima has some high connections. The entire police department is said to drop this right now. And Date's very insistent. Nope, I'm not dropping this. And she's like, then you're off this friggin' case. And so, not necessarily turning in his badge and gun, because he still got it. He's
Just
like,
going rogue.
I'm going rogue. I'm going to the mansion. So, and for some reason, I get it. Sure.
Actually, before
bring the 12-year-old along with you.
no, before he goes to the mansion, something else happens. He gets a message. He gets a very alarming message.
Oh shit, that's right. I forgot about that. Yep. Yeah, that's right. He gets a video message, about well, unfortunately, the 12-year-old. I forgot about that. Holy crap! How did I forget about this? That's right, Mizuki. She is kidnapped, but not necessarily kidnapped because it's at his house.
Yeah,
right,
I was a little confused by that.
I was too.
So,
I guess he recognized it.
So, well, consider this. Well, are you talking about how did he recognize where she was, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he recognized the background as far as what where the video was captured. But I think the idea of the person who actually ordered the kidnapping or the kind of break-in, I suppose. It's like, hey, I can get you where you live. I can get to your loved ones, kind of deal, right? So as a warning message, I think that's very effective. So like, hey, nobody is safe. Nowhere is safe. So that's pretty messed up.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to go back to Date's apartment. We have to locate her. She has been stuffed inside of one of these gigantic speakers. And when we rescue her, she gets mad because we rip off the tape.
So we put it back on?
Yep.
We put it back on.
Yeah. And
then rip it off again.
I like one of the things that I like most about this game is the relationship between characters. Date and Aiba relationship, I think, is probably my favorite. But second to that is probably Date and Mizuki. I think the characters have really good chemistry about like how they kind of like bounce off each other. And I've always loved like buddy cop kind of films and stuff like that. So Aiba and Date really fits the bill with that kind of thing, where you have like a robot assistant or something like that, with a detective, and Mizuki being this kind of weird superhuman child, and kind of has a mouth on her, being like too smart for her own good. But at the same time, she's still a child at the end of the day, and Date is very keen on looking after her. And all the stuff that they say to each other doesn't convey all the things that's happening between them that's not being said. And I think that's kind of the part of the story that I enjoy the most, because you see how much is buried and how much is underneath compared to the surface layer stuff. And if you can kind of hone in on that like emotion and what they mean to each other, I think the story actually resonates much more than it actually does.
Definitely would agree with that.
But yeah, he asked her like, who did this? She said it was 3 guys. We were in masks. I don't know who it was. They just came in, tied me up, stuffed me in there. It's like, well, I know who it is. So Sujima. And we're like, I'm going to go get him. And she's like, I'm coming too. And he's like, okay. Which I guess at that point,
she would not take no for an answer. She would have gone by herself, right? If she didn't go with him. So I think he made the best situation. And given that she can take care of herself mostly, is also probably he probably needed the help more than she did in a lot of ways.
I mean, if I had to bring a Super Saiyan with me, I guess I would.
Exactly.
Yeah, if I got to bring one 12-year-old, that's the one I want.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. So we're gonna storm the castle, I guess. And when we get there, it's almost like it's like a scene out of Yakuza. There's so many dudes.
Yeah.
And that we get some more action scenes. We get possibly the most ridiculous use of his superpower.
Porno mag.
Yeah, there's a porno mag over there on that island, and he's dodging bullets and running lightning fast.
Yeah. Also, I assume we just chalk it up to video game-ness, but the idea of like throwing a pipe and ricocheting a bullet off it in all these very specific directions. There's no way that's like mathematically calculated by Aiba. in real
Well,
life.
I mean, given that she is like a superior AI, I think the calculation is plausible. The only thing that doesn't make sense, if for example, if Aiba was fully in control of Date's mortar functionality,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that would make sense and that would work. But because she doesn't, it's obviously video game logic that it actually works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
You got to worry about the human factor.
yeah, it's play for funds mostly, so don't take that stuff too seriously though. But it is cool what they managed to accomplish.
Yeah, Mizuki's beating the crap out of guys with an iron pipe. And Date is a little bit like Batman. He's using gadgets. He's up on this little island that's surrounded by water. The guys are surrounding him. And so Ava tells him to shoot up into the air. It's a wire, like a grappling hook. The wires go down into the water. Lightning strikes and shocks everybody.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, that works. And then moving on into the mansion, Mizuki is in trouble. Gets hit with some tear gas and gets knocked out. Can't find her. It's dark in there. So we have to use, it's not night vision. We have to use some kind of vision. Maybe X-ray vision, I guess.
Yeah.
And we see that Tsujima's got her, holding her hostage. He's got a gun to her head. And so we decide, like Matt alluded to, we throw the lead pipe, shoot a round bullet into the pipe. It comes back out the pipe on the other end and goes through the wall and hits him in the head. Seemingly knocking him unconscious. And he releases Mizuki. She comes running to us. He gets up or reaches up with the gun, and we have to make a decision. Do we shoot him or do we save Mizuki? Well, I decide, shoot him. I got a bad ending. This is where I got my bad ending. So if I try to shoot him, he shoots me, and I die.
I did the same thing.
Yep.
And sadly didn't save it, so I had to go way, way back to play through all of the investigatory scenes leading up to going back to So's residence.
No.
Just go to the flowchart.
Yeah, you go to the flowchart, Matt. It auto-saves every single scene.
Yeah, I should have. I just hit retry, and it put me way back.
Yeah, you gotta always go to the flowchart. It always auto-saves every single scene that you enter, so just for feature reference sake. There you go.
Yeah, definitely. So I had to go back. And I thought that was the ending. That's why I sent you a text. I was like, so was it supposed to be a bad ending? And you're like, what the? I didn't even know you could get a fucking bad ending.
Drew in his wisdom always showing me to fail in ways that I didn't know possible. Thank you, Drew.
I'm a master at it.
Strive.
Exceptional.
Yep. So, go back and protect instead of shoot. And we're okay. So, he grabs her, rolls around, and as he's taking a shot, it goes off, and the bullet goes straight into Date's eye. The Aiba eye. And sorry. He's laying there, and Mizuki's thinking he's dead. He's not dead. He talks about how he really wants to go to a cabaret club.
that being his possible last words is
last words.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You figure like, oh, you're safe, Mizuki. Thank goodness. That's what I was expecting him to say, right? But it's like, oh, I want to go to a cabaret club.
And Tsujima comes up to him, puts the gun up to his head, and he says something that I didn't know was going to happen. Mm-hmm. He says, how pathetic, you're getting killed by your own father.
Ooh.
But Date pulls up his gun, pow, shoots him directly in the head, kills Tsujima, laying there dead. And then it cuts to later, right?
Yeah. So at this point, even though the fake eye that Date had ended up blocking the bullet. It was obviously still a lot of trauma to his head, and Date is in a coma. And Mizuki's there, so is Boss, and they're trying to figure out, like, oh man, what are we gonna do? And Boss basically says, like, hey, we might be able to bring him back if we sync with him. And you're the when Date was syncing with you earlier, your synchronization levels are very high. So I think you're the only person that might have the best chance at this. So do you want to try it? And of course, Mizuki says yes, and she does. And before that scene, when she's at the hospital and Boss tells Mizuki to talk to him to maybe try to bring him back or something like that. She says she's actually like honest for the very first time, as far as like her feelings and her appreciation for Date for like taking her in and everything. So I thought that was pretty sweet. And we go into the final Somnium of this particular path, where we actually dive into Date as Mizuki.
Yes. And it's basically Mizuki throughout. Okay. Matt, you need to go? Okay, he's going.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, you have to go. All right, that's fine. We'll continue.
Okay, yeah, we're basically done anyway, because this is the final path. I'll shoot Matt's questions to him over the direct messages. So we'll review them at the beginning of next episode, so we're on the same page. So no problems there. So okay, so we can take our time and continue from where we're at then. All right, go ahead, Ru.
Okay. Yeah. So it's basically throughout the years how Mizuki has basically been really harsh with Date. But also how Date, no matter how harsh she has been, he's taking care of her. So, feeding her. She remembers the first time he made I think it was soup or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't even that great, but he was so proud of it, because obviously he's living the bachelor life and not really taking good care of himself. So he was kind of put with this responsibility to take care of a child he obviously wasn't prepared for. But given the circumstances, he tried his best. But also, Date, just like Mizuki, has a hard time being honest about his feelings too. So that ended up causing a lot of friction between the two. But the scene I think that kind of stuck with me is when like Mizuki is like sleeping on like the sofa. He actually like takes her and then puts her on the bed. And that ends up being like her sleeping place for for good at that point. And Date ended up taking the couch and stuff like that. The little gift that he buys for her, not understanding and kind of like nervous about like what do kids like these days, right?
Yeah.
So he ends up getting this rabbit for her that looks kind of weird and freakish. And you can actually have her do a Somnium action where she like chucks it at a wall or something like that to like break it or something. But she'll refuse to do it, and she'll instead like hug it instead. Like really kind of going to show like how much that stuff like really meant to her and stuff like that.
Yeah. But eventually leads to the last mental lock, which is her having to choose. Her having to choose between her parents or choosing Date. And I mean, I like I said, this was one of the hardest ones because I ran out of time, and had to just had to go back, and I tried everything. I went to her parents one time, and you instantly fail.
Yep.
But going to Date, and Date, she's choosing Date, and Date's like, no, you don't need me. This isn't what's good for you. And he pushes her away, and that takes a lot of time off of you. You have to do it again. He pushes you off again. Takes a lot more time off, and then the third time, he accepts.
Yeah.
Gives her a big hug.
So consider this, right? We're diving into Date's Somnium. This is Date's subconscious. So consider his insecurities as a guardian, as being a very inferior guardian to what Mizuki needs and deserves, as how he sees it. So him kind of pushing her away is kind of saying like, hey, I'm not good enough to take care of you. You deserve someone better than I. So it kind of speaks to his feelings about how he feels about his own performance as a guardian.
Right.
Really kind of goes to show like he's really trying, but he doesn't feel like he's doing a good enough job.
Yeah. Or doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, and how would he? Because in a lot of ways, he's only 6 years old too, right? Because he only has memories of the last 6 years. And despite that, he took a child under his own wing. 2 years into his amnesia life cycle. So very difficult situation all around. But I think given how Mizuki feels about Date in her own honest feelings, I think he's done a great job with what he has.
Yeah. Yep. And he comes back out of his coma, and it seems like we're getting a nice little wrap up for Mizuki and Date's relationship. And I guess in this ending, so Tsujima was the killer.
Okay.
Or at least we think. I don't know.
So in this particular case, they say like they're rather eager to say, "Hey, he's the killer," right? It kind of like ribbon everything tied up nicely, but still, what was his motive for killing Shoko and Renju and attacking Iris?
Good question.
We have literally no information. Only thing that we know is that he had the potential to be the killer, and he was definitely the one inside the polar bear costume and did that to Iris, right? But outside of that, we really don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And there was that one last zinger we got at the end of this one too.
Yeah. What was that?
You're gonna have to. I don't remember the exact specifics. You're gonna have to tell me that one. I know it's referring to Iris's mother.
So what he told me, right? So she also had connections with like Renju and Shoko, but I'm not sure if that was what the zinger was. I actually don't have the after credits zinger on my notes here.
Crap, I can't remember what it was. It had something to do with her though.
Possibly.
Mizuki was like, "Oh yeah, I remember there was something else," and she was like, "Something to do with one of my dad's old classmates or something." God, I can't remember what it was.
Oh, I think what you're referring to is Mizuki told Date that Renju and Shoko and Hitomi were all classmates together.
Possibly.
Yeah, I don't. Since I didn't have it in the notes, it must not have been that shocking, at least to me. Not like the whole eyeball in Renju's stomach,
right?
And Iris taking the knife from Mayumi as the previous zinger. But maybe we can discuss it next time when we are talking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that ends the Mizuki ending, and that's gonna end our discussion as far as our progress of the game so far.
Right.
So right off the bat, I just have a few questions for you. One is actually like just a general temperature test as far as how do you feel about the game so far? What are you enjoying it? Like what are your general opinions and impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I kind of hinted at it a little bit. It feels a little bit more of a passive game in some aspects. I don't mind it. I'm actually really enjoying the Game Pass experience with this one.
Yeah.
Like I can sit there on my phone, play 20 minutes of it, and then instantly pull it up on my Xbox and saves there. Everything's like right there where I left it, kind of thing.
Right.
It's okay. Like I'm enjoying it so far. There's a pretty good mystery there. I'm still trying to wrap my head around these different quote endings, which I don't want to call them endings. I mean, they feel like character wrap ups more than endings.
That's true. They do have the names of the characters before the quote unquote ending for each of them. The first one being Ota ending, and the one that we just discussed being the Mizuki ending. So if you figured if it follows that pattern, then we should be getting another character's ending next, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Which character do you think are left?
So I think we're going to have a Iris ending.
Okay.
I think we're going to have Iris's mother's ending.
Hitomi's ending. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we're going to have a Date ending.
Ooh, going with the main character. All right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Those solid guesses for sure. So, all right. So I kind of guessed it. I'm glad you're not like hating the experience, because that's like the worst when you're doing like a playthrough, and if you don't enjoy like aspects of the game, and it can be like a bad thing, because we're kind of committed to finish it at this point, right? So
No. I'm all in to see it through.
Okay. So only thing that I will promise you is that you won't see what happens coming. Is the best thing that I can tell you to kind of entice you to continue, and that goes for literally everyone. I don't know who you are, like how smart you think that you are. You're not guessing the kind of stuff that's actually the bigger picture here. So that's gonna be my big hint as far as what to expect. So expect something unexpected, right?
So I have a couple questions for you.
I will answer them if I can.
Okay. All right. Yes, we have a superhuman girl running around. Is there any other supernatural things that happen in this game?
Not anything that hasn't already been established.
Okay. And the last one is, and you can, are there any characters introduced that I have not met yet?
In the path that we have, we still have multiple paths to go. So yes, there's characters you haven't met yet.
So there's characters I haven't even seen yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And this one you probably won't answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Have I already met the killer?
No comment, obviously. Come on, True.
There's a lot of characters we've already met.
Oh, it's actually Kagami. He's the killer. So
I knew it.
That's why they made a big deal about his name and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's very sneaky of you to try to get that information from me. But I respect the attempt.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now let's turn the tables a bit. I have questions for you, my friend.
Okay, let's do it.
This is the big one. This is the one that I'm going to write down. This is going to be the answer that you're going to be accounted for.
Who do I think the killer is?
Who is the new Cyclops killer? And why do you think it is? And like I said before in the Danganronpa playthroughs, at the end of next episode, you will have the opportunity to change your answer.
Okay. As it stands right now,
yes.
I think Iris or her mother.
You can only choose one, friend.
Iris's mother.
He told me. Okay. And tell me why.
It's really like the past couple of times, the past couple of paths really pushed the Iris thing. Mm-hmm. And there's more to Iris than what I think. Mainly because she's gotten involved in this, and when she really wasn't involved at all, it seemed like she was just a YouTuber who just happened to be there, and all of a sudden, now she's being kidnapped and all this other stuff. I think she's covering for her mom. Because I know me and you alluded to it because I saw it on accident. Mm-hmm. I think Iris did see the original killings.
Okay.
And I think her mom was the one doing it.
Interesting.
And she was there when it happened.
Okay. So, you will have one more opportunity to guess who the killer is and change your answer at the end of next episode. Because the third episode, by then you'll know who it is by the natural progression of the story. But by the end of the second one, you shall not. But you'll have a lot more information than you have compared to now. But I will say, don't forget any of the previous paths, because think of it almost like a jigsaw puzzle, right? You're getting pieces of the puzzle in each of the branches, and you have to be able to kind of connect them together. Because if you only count on one singular branch and its story to figure out what's going on, it won't be enough.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna post that same question to Matt and on our DMs, and then I'm gonna write that information down. And at the beginning of, actually no, at the end of next episode, I'm gonna go ahead and discuss or bring up the answers that you guys had, and at that point you will have the opportunity to change the answer.
Okay.
The other question I have for you, and this one is going to be answered more readily, so this is going to be your last chance to give me an answer for this one.
Mm-hmm.
As a dramatic bit of information, we learned that Shoko's eye was found inside Renju.
Mm-hmm.
Is there significance to the removal of the eye and the fact that it was discovered, devoured by Renju?
There's obviously a significance.
Okay.
But what that significance is, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I do have a theory, because I love my theories.
Absolutely.
The boss is correct when she says that it is impossible that the original Cyclops killer is the new Cyclops killer. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because Date was the original Cyclops killer.
Ooh.
The reason why I say that is because my theory is he was the killer. The police took him in, erased his memories, and turned him into a detective.
Why would they go to all that trouble, though?
I have no clue.
Okay. So, that still doesn't answer my question about the significance of the removal of the eye, though.
That's true.
So, I like your theory. I like where your head's at. And given especially what you saw about the other path that we'll be starting off with next episode, obviously is a very big hint or very big bit of evidence that could possibly point to that being the truth, right? So
it could be a red herring.
Yeah, could be. Like I said, the key word is interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you see in the Somnium doesn't necessarily mean exactly what it appears to be.
Right.
So I'll leave that in your consideration. But as far as it's perfectly fine to say like, hey, I have no theory about the eye. There's got to be something, but I'm not sure what it is. That's okay too.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can think of. Why would her eye be in his stomach? I mean, it's been put there. I don't think Renju would have done that. Like killed her, took her eye, and then ate it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the significance of that.
Okay.
Unless it is one of those. Maybe there's more than one Cyclops killer. Maybe she was killed by Renju. Renju was killed by somebody else. Somebody else was killed by somebody else. It's like a chain of them.
Okay. So it's like almost like multiple serial killers kind of business?
Possibly. I don't know.
Okay.
I think that's improbable. So.
Yeah, but a lot of different information are happening because I'm not gonna break down the pattern here, but there is a clear pattern of information gathering, suspects, and everything else in between. When you're able to locate that pattern, things will become clearer to you. But it might take a little bit longer for you to be able to locate the pattern. So,
okay.
Yeah, you'll get there for sure. But, yeah, that's it for the two serious questions. The other one was just kind of more of a fun thing. I told you, just try to make a mental note of one Somnium action that you could do that you thought was particularly funny or interesting in the context of it.
Yep.
Did you note anything down?
I mean, the biggest one for me was Iris's Somnium. It was very disturbing. I like the Rube Goldberg machine.
Oh yeah,
that you had to do.
That thing goes for like a minute and a half too.
It does. I was just like, geez. I was sitting there on my phone watching that, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's going forever. This better be right the choice.
Yeah, I remember you got stuck at the TV part of it too. So it's funny.
Yeah.
Like the interesting thing about the way that I did my playthrough, Drew, and this is gonna be like telling to my personality, I guess, a little bit, is that I originally ended up going to the B route, where I chose the right bird cage. I did not like the consequences of choosing that right path. So I made the conscious effort to say, like, no, I'm not going to choose that. I'm actually going to go with the left bird cage instead. And I started going down the left path instead, and then followed a similar path to what we're doing now, compared to, you know, what I would have done before. But the fact of the matter is, you could have just finished like B, and then BA, and then went to like the A path afterwards. So you would be dealing with completely different paths and branches of information, compared to what we have now. So I'm curious as to what will be easier to solve as far as the bigger picture, if you went to the B route or the A route. But I think the general consensus is that the A route seems to provide for a more smoother storytelling experience. I'm hoping for the best of that. So we'll see how that goes. My favorite Somnium action is in Mayumi Somnium. You can do something pretty funny where there's like a bucket on the ground, and you can actually choose to have Aiba wear the bucket. And I figured, she's just gonna put it on and say like, this is stupid, and just take it off. No, you did the rest of the Somnium with the bucket on their head. So you're going through this very sad, somber Somnium with this very depressing topic, and Aiba is just basically has a giant trash bucket on their head entirely through the whole process. I'm glad I only discovered this on my second playthrough, because it would have totally ruined the mood for first playthrough, but I'm glad they were able to do that. And also, this is also the Somnium where you get those Danganronpa 999, and you also see a Junko Enoshima autograph over there too with Monokuma.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of little fun stuff that you can see there. But that was my favorite Somnium activity. There's a lot of funny, dumb stuff that you can make Aiba do, a lot of which you're going to end up missing. But I think you'll like the fact that this is a game where it's very easy to get the full 1,000 points on. So yeah, once you complete the game, it's very easy for you to just go back to the flowchart and be like, okay, this, and then you just be done in like an hour, just getting 1,000 points. I can tell you because I have the Platinum Trophy on PSN. It's very, very easy to get. And once I beat the game, there was like 5 trophies that I was missing. I was like, I just need to go back to these flowchart moments, just get that knocked out of the way, and then I just had the Platinum. So I know how much you love those achievement points for your paying off your Game Pass stuff, so
that's right.
Knock yourself out, if you want to go ahead and finish off AI the Somnium files afterwards.
I definitely will.
Yeah, we'll see that. So yeah, that's it for my questions for today. The next scenario that we're going to be going through is going to start off actually at let's see here what my notes say. So from the Somnium on day 3, it's called
Irises.
Yeah, Psyching in the Vein, the right branch. So this is going to be Iris' Somnium, where you choose to turn the dial instead of hitting the TV.
Yep, I did all that.
Yeah, I know you did. So following that path has like this ending that you can get, but I will tell you right now, you can't complete that path with the information that you have now. You're going to be stopped in the middle. So don't panic.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to say to be continued.
Will the game...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to basically say like case stopped. And then it becomes locked. When you get to a certain point in the other paths, where you get the information that you need in order to continue that path, you'll be able to unlock and we'll be able to go back and finish it. But for now, after you complete the path as much as you can, we actually are going to end up going to BA, which is going to be choosing the right birdcage and then following that all the way down to the BA path. And that's going to be a decent amount of chunk of whole new content that you've never seen before, dealing with characters and scenarios that are very unique as well. So this is basically the path that Matt went through for a couple of hours. So we're going to be following up on that. So maybe you'll be able to gather some information where he was kind of like hinting at, because he has some information that you did not. So If you're following along at home, feel free to continue that route. So basically, you follow the route from Iris to Somnium. You choose the right branch. You choose the right birdcage at the Mizuki's Somnium at the very beginning of the game, and then you follow the left branch of that path all the way down to the end. And that's going to be where we're going to be recording the second session.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. And we do have an email.
Oh, terrific.
It comes in from Dustin. It's kind of short. It's titled Bloodhound Gang. Iba here. Date is a horny man, as you all have come to find out. I'd like to share some of his inner monologues with you, to his embarrassment. Vulcanize the whoopee stick in the ham wallet. Cattle prod the oyster ditch with the lap rocket. Batter dip the cranny axe in the gut locker. Retrofit the pudding hatch with the boink swatter. Oh, but wait, my friends, it goes on some more, especially for those long car rides. Marinate the nether rod in the squish mitten. Power drill the yippee bog with the dude piston. What the fuck? Pressure wash the quiver bone in the bitch wrinkle. Cannonball the fiddle cove with the pork steeple. I know. It seems we'll have to increase the dosage to calm him down. He is rather embarrassed, though. Mission complete. Well, looks like we're out. We're at our destination. Later, pervs. Iba.
That's a lot of sexual innuendo.
This is true.
Yeah. I mean, to be frank, Date is a very simple man. All he really needs is a bit of porno mag here and there. He doesn't really need any innuendos. He just needs giant breasts behind the counter, just some porno mags, and he's good. You know, simple man,
yep.
Simple needs.
That's right. And thank you for that emo. It was very funny to read. But yeah, that's going to be it. Man, I appreciate everybody listening. You've stayed with us this long. This is a hell of a podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you would like to send us an email, it's drew@ztgd.com. You can also follow us. I am at DML Fury. Matt is at REMGS, and Jay is at Batusai J. The podcast itself is at ZTGD Phoenix Down. But I think that's going to be it for us this week. I'm excited to get into more. So I want to see where this goes.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm completely wrong with all of my predictions.
We'll see. At least you didn't say that everyone's dead and they're in purgatory or something.
Here we go, dude. That fit for 2 episodes. Over half that game, it fit.
I never said you were wrong when you were saying it. You were just very enthusiastic about it. But
I was very enthusiastic about it.
But no, that's the beauty of these mystery games, right? It's not about being right. In fact, being right is actually contrary to the actual enjoyment of the experience. If you call something this early on, then it would make for a very predictable and boring story. It's because that we're not able to predict it and things take like strange turns that we're able to enjoy these stories. So whatever theories that you might have about the game, keep them coming. Like, try to add to the information that you have and see if your theory holds up with the information that comes in, because it's going to be a pretty good time, I think. And this episode ran long because we ended up delaying it for a week and ended up doing another path on top of what we were going to do. So I'm hoping that the next episode will be a little bit shorter. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure if this is going to be a 3-episode or a 4-episode thing, but we'll see based on how much progress made.
There you go. Sounds good. But that's going to be it for us. I appreciate everybody listening. Until next time, though, I am Drew.
This is Jay.
And we are out of here. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll be back next week with the continuation of AI, the Somnium Files.